Hello, everyone. Just letting people trickle in. Sorry, we're being very quiet right now as people start to join in. We are officially live. So right now, 3 people on the screen will be the first ones to greet you and talk. But just we're going to be quiet for a few minutes and let folks join in. We are here on YouTube, and we're also live streaming on we're here on Zoom, and we're also live streaming on YouTube. So after the 500 mark, if we get that high, Zoom is going to start to redirect everyone to YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and share the link now in chat if you feel like you want to, jump off Zoom and watch on YouTube, now or at some later point.
Hello.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Very good, thanks. And you?
All good. Everything is good. Sorry, I was waiting for Angelica to answer, but I wasn't sure who to go first. But
you were just teasing me into thinking there was a delay on the line there, right?
Yes, this is how we get on early to test. Now all is good.
Can someone help me? Does Zoom have a feature where we can actually do a blur of the background?
They don't have a blur feature. The best you can do with Zoom is change your background. So you can go into.
Sorry, apologies. This is probably a bit basic, but I'm.
No, it's a valid question, and I don't even. I know it has that feature. You have to go into the video settings.
Video, yeah, okay.
Oh, you should see like it says choose virtual background, maybe. Oh.
I'm in the preferences, advanced, maybe, no. Oh, you're doing it somehow. Oh, yes. Background and filters. Sorry, yeah. I've got it now.
No problem. Yeah, I was very intrigued that this video filter is new, and I'm like, wait, what is this? Sorry.
It's like when I realized yesterday that you can do breakout sessions in Google Meets now. I was totally blown away.
Nice.
I wanted to check out the background feature, but it says my CPU isn't good enough.
You know what? It says the same for me. So time for a new machine.
But I'm not worried, given that my MacBook Air is already it's turning 8 years old this year, so a bit rusty.
Great. So we're at 200. Hello, everyone. Just letting folks trickle in. I know the agenda says 1, but we usually start, about 5 or 6 minutes after, to kind of let folks come in. Maybe. But we are live streaming on YouTube as well. I shared the link earlier. We also, again, if you're already signed up, the Gopher Slack channel, Learn Go Meetup. That's where we'll be posting all the questions and all the chatter. I hope to get started soon. You'll see our panelists so far, Niels Muller and Paul Jolly, have joined. They'll be coming in and out as they start their talk. And then, of course, my lovely host, Angelica Hill. But if you give us a few minutes, we'll go ahead and get everything started. Thank you.
This is almost my favorite part of these events, where people say hello from where they're from. It baffles me. It's genuinely global. Chicago, Poland, Israel, Nigeria, Paris, Ann Arbor, Athens, San Francisco Bay, Germany, Berlin, Finland, Switzerland, India, Greece, Iran, London. Hi, I miss you. Portugal, New York, of course, Croatia. Oh my gosh, so lovely to see so many people from genuinely all over the world. San Francisco, Virginia, Philadelphia. I'm going to stop. I'm just going to end up spending the whole meetup just listing all the wonderful places we have Gophers.
I'm a bit old school, but I like the in-person meetups that we used to have in London Gophers. Let's look forward to those days again.
Definitely looking forward to in-person, but I feel like this is not all that bad.
It's excellent, actually. One of our team got us live streaming the London Gophers events as well, and that helped us to sort of have the in-person event and broadcast to the world as well. So this is an excellent setup. It really is.
And I should probably have asked you this, not right now, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Are you in London?
I'm not. I've actually moved out of London. We were lucky to move out to the countryside at an opportune moment last year. So, but I was in London for about almost 20 years before that. So
awesome. I'm very much, as you can probably tell, I am from London, but I am now located in New York City and very much missing home.
London will always welcome people back.
True. Well, I'm not sure whether I want to go back, but we'll see where the winds take me. As we've seen from this, we have a global Gopher community, so I feel like I can go almost anywhere.
Advantage of proper UTF-8 support, I guess.
Sorry?
It's the advantage of proper UTF-8 support in the language. Yeah, to be honest, last year's GopherCon was my first conference ever, and it was virtual, and I don't regret anything. It's like the most amazing thing to meet up with so many people from all over the world, and just being able to chill out while others are showing their presentation and commenting on things on Discord was really great experience.
I really feel like my apartment, Knoll, is not all that New York City. It could be anywhere, maybe, but I'm glad that I'm giving off a very New York aesthetic. I think we're at 3:45. I think we'll just wait as more people trickle in. As Wilken mentioned, we want to make sure we have kind of a quorum and we have as many people as possible before we kick off.
Yeah, sounds good. We're climbing pretty quickly, so that's good. I say probably another 3 minutes or so and get things going.
I see people are using the raised hand functionality. I would ask, I feel like just because we don't want too much like clutter. Maybe if you have any questions, comments, if you could put them in the chat.
Yes, so GopherCon, let's see. So I see someone just asked for a link to sign up for the Gopher Slack. So let me just go pull that up really quick. And let's see. Invite. Sounds good. Yeah. Is it Gophers? Yeah, Slack.com, right? Yeah. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. All right.
All right, I'm in. Let's see.
There you go. Hey, Bill.
We got you in.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice. I was looking for Kennedy. I forgot to look for Art and Labs.
You know, Zoom drives me crazy with these accounts, and I never know who I am. Sometimes I'm GoBridge, sometimes I'm Arden. I'm never myself, though. Should put it that way. Let's see, rename.
So yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get started at 110. We're letting folks trickle in. We're at 378 right now, and we're also on YouTube live. So
Nice.
it's good.
So then I'll just mute and stop my video, and then you can just say, Bill, where are you?
Yeah, sounds good.
It's nice to see everybody. Nice to see you, Paul.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
It's good, man. I just
Looks like you're very busy these days.
I just bought a house in Huntsville, Alabama. So I'm here putting the house together in the middle of all this. But other than that, yeah, fun.
That's on top of the new book, right?
Yeah, I try to squeeze at least a couple hours a day. I'm so close to my first pass. Books are horrible. When I first wrote Go in Action, it was fun for about 3 months. And then Manning turns around and says, we have this early access program, so we're going to start showing the book to everybody. And I panicked. And the job turned to work. And
You're live, Bill. You know that, right? You've got to be selling these.
I know I'm live. Everybody gets this story. It's all good. And I literally got PTSD from writing a book. So it has been so hard. Like blogs are one thing, but the books, they're hard, man. You have to put so much time into them. Anyway, that's my live story.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to be quiet.
All right. Well, also, we're going to go ahead and get started. Bill, if you can do me a favor, because I think you would probably know it better than anyone. There's the invite to Gopher Slack. Do you know?
Is it broken right now? Because I need to replace the link in 2 days, but it's invite.slack.gobridge.org. Invite.slack.gobridge.org. And every month I got to fix that. And we're on the 27th. So what I'll do is maybe fix that now while we're in the middle of this. It should be working.
All right.
But I got to do funky things every 30 days. But invite.slack.gobridge.org.
Awesome. Well, there you go, everyone. That's the URL. All right, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being so patient with us as we, let folks join in and get ourselves set up. Really, really excited to be here today, and really, this event wouldn't be possible without any of you. So thank you. I really appreciate you joining us today for our first GDN Go Developer Network meetup. My name is Wilken Rivera. I'm a member of the GoBridge team, the GDN team, and I'll be one of your hosts today alongside my good friend, Angelica Hill.
Hello, I'm Angelica Hill. I'm a product manager at the New York Times, but in my spare time, I'm a Gopher, and I do various events and Go-related things. We have a group of wonderful presenters for you today. They're presenting on tips and tricks for learning, their personal experiences, as well as introducing you to some specific tools and communities that you can get involved in if you're interested in learning or helping others learn.
Awesome. This is great. I'm really excited. Again, I just want to take a minute to welcome all our first timers. If this is your first Go meetup, welcome. We're really excited to have you. There's no such thing as a silly question, so please feel free to ask questions in the Zoom chat or the Gopher Slack. And before we go introducing our first speaker, I definitely just want to take a minute to just share with everyone a little bit about GDN. So GDN is an abbreviation for the Go Developer Network, and it was started probably 2019, maybe late 2018, but between GoBridge, which was started in 2015 by one of our speakers today, Bill Kennedy. And it's really meant to create a network for our Go user groups, really to sort of empower them to share their experiences, their stories, knowledge across virtual spaces and different, I guess all virtual now, but in the future, maybe hopefully they'll be in person. But the idea is just to share information and empower future generations of Go developers. If you have any questions or you're interested in learning more or being involved, feel free to reach out. The URL to hit up is gdn.gobridge.org. Once again, that's gdn.gobridge.org. All right, I'm going to hand the mic back over to Angelica to kick things off. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Wilken. So our first wonderful speaker is going to be Nils Muller, who is a platform engineer. And in his talk, he's going to be investigating exorcism platform from 3 different perspectives: as a mentee, as a mentor, and as a team in times of remote work. Nils will describe the experience of teaching on exorcism, as well as share their insights gained from using the platform as a tool for remote coding. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me share the screen then. So, did it work? Can you all see my
Your
screen?
screen clearly. Looking great.
Great. Okay, thanks, Angelica. Good evening from Germany. My name is Nils, and I'm very honored to give the first talk of today's meetup. I'm also a bit nervous, so please excuse any weird behavior. My talk has, as Angelica already said, the title Exorcism.io, One Platform, 3 Perspectives, and I hope you really enjoy it. Given that this talk is mostly about myself and my own experience, I'd like to start with a short introduction of myself. I'm 31 years old. I started coding at the age of 24, and I became a Gopher about 1 year ago, and I really digged into the community at the virtual GopherCon last year. And as you maybe can tell from the picture, I love Star Trek and science fiction in general and nature. I live in Bielefeld, which is a city in the northwest of Germany. It has a population of about 340,000, and it's the country's 18th biggest city. I work as a platform engineer at Real Digital, which is one of the biggest German e-commerce platforms. And if you're interested in DevOps and want to work with Go, I'm happy to answer all your questions later, maybe in the Gopher Slack. I love Japanese curry, and to be honest, I like any vegan curry. And I really enjoy Go time. Listening to podcasts was my personal discovery of 2020, given that most of us had a lot more free time. Yeah, Go Time is my go-to podcast every week. I'm very happy every time a new show goes up. If you want to find me, you can find me as Shimster on Twitter and GitHub. And I'd very much like you reaching out to me afterwards if you want to. And I think I'll share my slides later on GitHub and on Twitter, the link there as well. Today's agenda. First, I will give you some background on Exorcism, and then I'll present you my 3 perspectives on the platform as a mentee, as a mentor, and as a member of the remote team. To kick things off, I want to tell you what Exorcism is, and therefore I want to quote Wikipedia. Exorcism is an online coding platform that offers code practice and mentorship. Where other online coding platforms are mostly about challenges and competition, Exorcism focuses on community and compassion. You won't find a public leaderboard on Exorcism, neither will people obfuscate their results to gain an advantage. Instead, you will be welcomed by friendly mentors and really sympathetic discussion sections. Exorcism has a community of around 330,000 users in 200 countries. It has a group of about 2,500 mentors in 29 time zones. And it has a variety of curated exercises in 50 programming languages, Go being one of them. Let me now tell you how I settled on Exorcism for learning new programming languages and how it helped me learning to write especially idiomatic code faster. As I got started with coding, I was mostly on my own and struggled with really long feedback loops. My first real programming language was MATLAB, which I learned without much guidance in my last year of undergrad studies. So I studied maths as an undergrad. Really everything confused me, and I had to wait a week to get feedback from my maths tutor, which, as you can tell from learning programming languages, is really a long time to get feedback on your code. I didn't know where to start or how to start, and I didn't really know how to grow as a programmer. I did some tutorials back then, but I didn't really know how to continue from there. I think most of you can relate. It's a different thing to do a coding tutorial versus programming a real first project afterwards. Once I got a bit of confidence with using MATLAB, I wanted to look further. I really wanted to become a programmer. And by chance, I learned about Python, and I really liked it a lot. So I spent a lot of time reading books and blogs about it. And after a few weeks of learning Python, I realized my code still looked a lot like MATLAB. In general, as I tried new languages, I had trouble unlearning old habits, like how to write idiomatic code in the new language, or how to stop using old programming patterns you grew accustomed to using your first or second language. At my first job, a colleague recommended me using a platform called Exorcism, and he told me that this would help me improving my programming skills a lot. So how does Exorcism reach this goal, like improving your skills? Firstly, it has mentors. Exorcism mentors will support you and guide you to idiomatic code. Mentors are there to answer your questions and to point out how to write better code. But you have to keep in mind that they are volunteers, but they want you to excel in the end. So be always friendly to them. Secondly, Exorcism has tests. Each exercise comes with a test suite for immediate feedback. When you download an exercise using the great Exorcism CLI, which is written in Go, by the way, you will also get a test suite. The tests will then help you find a working solution of your problem using test-driven development. The Go track comes with 109 exercises as of December 2020 of varying difficulty. It starts with Hello World and extends your knowledge little by little, so you won't get overwhelmed if you follow the path the platform offers you. The exercises cover a lot of ground, including concurrency and data structures and maths, for example. To get the most out of exorcism as a mentee, you should ask your mentors all the questions, even if they're only partially related to the current exercise. You should compare your solutions to those of other mentees. And you can look at the community solutions for each exercise once you submitted at least a partially solved exercise. And often those exercises with a lot of stars or a lot of comments are really worth comparing to. And you really should explore the language in the safe environment, as you don't have to fear anything while experimenting with exorcism and the exercises you can download there. In the next section, I want to tell you how mentoring on exorcism profited me personally as a mentor. After being a teaching assistant at university, I wanted to keep on mentoring, but I didn't have the time for in-person classes. I was looking for an open community where I could help mentoring people regardless of the backgrounds. These personal guiding principles are reflected by exorcism's value proposition. We envision a world where anyone from any background can become fluent in any programming language for free, through programming exercises, resources, and a safe and nurturing community. As a mentor, it is your main objective to foster the safe and nurturing community. Be compassionate, welcoming, and above all, patient. Mentoring on exorcism is a great way of becoming a better developer and a humble teacher. You will likely see approaches to tasks you would have never thought of yourself. Sometimes these approaches can be a bit unexpected as well. So take your time to guide your mentees to an idiomatic solution. Great community mentor notes are there to help you out when in doubt. And I really cannot stress enough how much the mentor notes have helped me over the last months while mentoring. They cover feedback to the most frequently submitted approaches, as well as technical background information you can share with your mentees, like how to use concurrency in Go or how to expose a web server securely. Because of the asynchronous nature of the platform, you can mentor at your own pace. You're not expected to respond as soon as possible, which stressed me out a bit at first, because every time I received a message or mail that there's a new solution I was mentoring, I panicked out and got straight back to my computer. And you don't have to fulfill a quota to be valid. Just pick a solution from the queue and start mentoring. To be a supportive mentor on exorcism, there are three main rules, I'd say. The first one, be humble and patient. If you are surprised by a solution, don't force it to look like your expected solution immediately. Go with your mentee's approach until it works for both of you. People should learn from you, not learn how to follow your approach. Second, make use of the community mentor notes. If in doubt, check how more experienced mentors have solved your teaching exercise. And lastly, don't rush yourself, which I think is a great advice in general, but if you're a mentor, keep it in mind. You shouldn't try to mentor 10 mentees at once, especially if you start mentoring. Go slowly and improve steadily. In the remaining time, I'd like to share with you how we're using Exorcism at my company as a team. In August 2020, Real Digital decided to go remote first. While it made life easier in general, it made especially knowledge transfer more difficult. And especially the onboarding of new hires, which requires a different approach in the remote setting compared to co-located teams. So teams where people work in the same room or in the same building. Getting into the same pace takes more time and effort in the new remote setting. We realized quickly that pair programming helped with some of the previously mentioned difficulties. But while pair programming facilitated the collaboration between two of the team members, it didn't work for the whole team. To counter this, I proposed the introduction of remote coding dojos using Exorcism. And to quote from codingdojo.org, a coding dojo is a meeting where a bunch of coders get together to work on a program challenge. They are there to have fun and to engage in deliberate practice in order to improve their skills. So why did we choose Exorcism? First, it has a free Teams edition. The Teams edition lets your team work in a closed environment that's shielded from the public-facing homepage. So your solutions and discussions won't be shared with the outside world. So you don't have to be ashamed of anything. Second is that it has lots of exercises at different levels of difficulty. So it can reach your team members exactly where they are in their current Go journey, being they are newbies or more advanced or even veteran Go programmers. Third, it has clear defined tasks. So you don't waste your time defining the parameters of your exercise, which in my experience in the past with coding dojos was sometimes an issue. So we spent more time on defining what we should solve instead of solving the problem itself. And it's great infrastructure for async discussion. And continuing the discussion of the solutions after the synchronous event has ended is very important to us. So we don't stop once the dojo is over. Approaching Exorcism as a team is different compared to using it as an individual user. So how does it work? Each session has a theme, like algorithms or data structures. And depending on the group size, prepare up to 3 different exercises up front. The fewer you pick, the more details you can discuss later. At the moment, I mostly prepare 2 exercises, one easy and one medium, so people don't get bored and don't get shied away by 2 difficult exercises. We start by introducing the exercises with an emphasis on what to learn and what to watch out for. And you should balance between spoiling too much and telling too little about the exercises. Sometimes having a good preparation makes it easier, especially for newbies, to choose the exercise that is fitting them best. And in the end, this is what everything boils down to. Depending on the group size, we work in pairs or as a mob. If you don't know what mob programming is, there's a great book called Code with the Wisdom of the Crowd. But decide this based on your team. If you have introverts in your team, sticking to pair programming might be easier for them. Whatever you choose, you shouldn't stress people out because of the format you're programming in. We set aside 30 minutes each for solving the exercises and discussing the solutions afterwards. And as communication is key, you should point out clearly when to rejoin for the discussions, especially if you're using mixed platforms like Meets or Zoom and Slack at the same time to coordinate. And I usually start a timer on my smartphone and announce the remaining time in our Slack channel frequently, like every 10 minutes. Following each session, the exercism platform can be used to discuss open points. And in my opinion, discussion is the most vital part of a coding dojo. So motivate your team to continue discussing using the exercism platform. To sum it up, the team guide: choose a theme and pick suiting exercises. Emphasis: learning outcomes. Spare about 30 minutes each of coding and discussion. And in the end, you'll profit as a team and as a company, and as an individual person. If there are only 3 points you should take away from this talk, then they are that exercism is an open and welcoming coding platform. It is benefiting mentees and mentors alike, and it's great for knowledge sharing and remote team building. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention and hand back over to Angelica.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciated that very interesting talk. You got some nice comments about how beautiful your slides were, as well as obviously the wonderful content of your talk. We've got a few questions that I've seen coming in through the chat and also on our Slack channel. So I'm just going to dive right in. The first question is from, and forgive me if I pronounce your names wrong, Fon, which is, as a mentor, can you choose the level of the mentees?
So it works like so. There are different levels of exercises, and they are hierarchically ordered with growing difficulty. And you can pick whichever you want. So you can pick all the time the easiest ones, or the less complicated ones. Or if you're deeper into the language and deeper into mentoring, you can start by picking off the more difficult ones. To be honest, when I started, I only picked the first 2 or 3 exercises all the time to help clear out the queue, which then in turn helped the more experienced mentors to concentrate on the more solutions.
Thank you. Our next question is, which I heard from a few people, how do you pair mentors with mentees? Is it truly randomized? Can you speak to the process there?
So as a mentee, you don't have any impact on who's going to mentor you. You're just submitting your solution. And then there's the queue, depending on your programming language. And mentors with free time just pick whichever solution they want to mentor. And if you want to close things and be sure that only certain people are mentoring you, then you can always start a Teams edition group and invite people you want to have for mentoring.
Awesome. And I'm just going to ask one more question. And then obviously feel free, continue to put your questions in the Slack channel or in the chat. And then after Nils can get to them, or feel free to reach out to him directly. The last question is, how is this different from Stack Overflow, where people can give feedback and propositions to and have that community feel? How would you define it as being different?
So to me, the approach of Stack Overflow is different compared to exercism. On Stack Overflow, you mostly come, at least in my opinion, in my experience, with a problem you want to have opinions on or solutions for. And exercism is more about the training process, going from step to a proper solution in the end, and less about having a solution in the end. It's more about doing it yourself versus asking for help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. As I say, I would encourage anyone on this meetup to reach out directly if you have any follow-up questions. It's a great platform. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Wilken to introduce our next speaker.
Awesome. Thank you, Angelica. Nils, thank you so much for that talk. Great stuff. My origin story begins with exorcism as well, so I'm a big fan. So thank you for speaking about it today and sharing.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Once again, I just want to reiterate, we're if you have some questions, we are tracking them in the Gopher Slack channel. Well, I see some people asking for the link. We'll try to get you that in the Zoom chat in a second. But inside the Learn Go meetup channel, we're threading the questions there. So feel free to post your questions even after the talk. If we have time, we'll get to them. If not, maybe the speakers can get to them afterwards. With that said, I definitely want to take the opportunity to introduce the next speaker. This gentleman is someone who I've met before and used his platform for learning. The title of his talk is Journey Before Destination. Our speaker, John Calhoun, the creator of Gopher Sizes. For many of us, learning to program is a means to an end. We want to get a job, to get paid, or to build a specific app. The end result is that we often try to skip to the end. We want to build a modern apps or write idiomatic code from the start, and we don't want to waste time learning the wrong way of doing things. So in this talk, John explains the importance of resisting the temptation to try to skip ahead and why it's important to focus on the learning journey rather than the specific destination. So with that, I get handed back to Angelica.
Journey Before Destination. Many of you are probably going to recognize the title. It is an ideal from the Stormlight Archive book series written by Brandon Sanderson. And in the books, it basically means that how you do something is more important than the end result. That your journey to get there matters more than the actual destination itself. In the books, it's mostly referring to morality. So whether or not performing some evil acts to achieve some good results is justifiable. But as I read the books, all I could really think about was how this also applies to other things, such as learning to code. I guess you could kind of say I'm a nerd for that, but in my head, I feel like people get so focused on the destination and where they're going that they forget about how much value there is in the journey itself. And that's going to be the focus of today's talk. How much value there is in the journey, why you shouldn't be skipping to the destination, and we're going to talk about how to make that journey more enjoyable and more effective. So before we get started, a little bit about me so you understand why I'm the person giving this talk. My name is John Calhoun. I am a GoTime panelist. So GoTime is a podcast where we bring on different guests and we talk about different things related to Go, and we try to keep it educational and entertaining for our audience. I also create Go courses. So here are some of the ones I've created. I'm constantly working on new ones. You've probably heard of Gopher Sizes before you'll hear of any of the other courses there, because Gopher Sizes is free and it targets kind of the beginner to intermediate range developer, where you've started to get the basics of Go down and you're writing some basic code, but you need some practice problems, some exercises to sort of help you, level up those skills along the way. I also write a Go newsletter, and the newsletter is just intended to teach people something new about Go every week, roughly. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks. And this is just an example. I wrote a crash course on Go interfaces and shared that with my mailing list. And then we kind of built on that throughout the next couple emails as we looked at different ways interfaces can be used and eventually looked at some harder problems that required a pretty good understanding of interfaces. I also write on my website. I write tutorials, whatever they want to call them, blog tutorials, whatever. I write those on my website. And most of the time, the things in my newsletter will end up getting on the website as well. But this is how I got started. So there's a lot of stuff there that isn't in the newsletter as well. So these are just different little tutorials that'll teach you something if you're looking to learn some specific thing. And lastly, I'm working on a Go book. I don't really have a lot to share about this, but I'm working with a publisher to create a book related to Go. I say all this to say that I have a lot of experience helping people in a lot of different ways. And I've also interacted with a lot of people who are learning to code who come from a variety of different backgrounds. And this has sort of allowed me to really get an understanding of where people make mistakes, what techniques do and don't work. And I want to kind of share what I believe to be some good ways to go about learning so that you can hopefully kick off your journey to learning how to code and be a little bit more effective and productive with it. learning to code is a means to an end. For most of us, learning to code is something we do to make money and pay the bills. That isn't to say that we don't enjoy it or that we wouldn't do it in our spare time, but it is a way that we, a means to some sort of end. And that could even be if you want to start your own business and you're trying to build the technology for it. Coding is still a means to an end. It's not something that you're just going to sit there and do forever because you enjoy it. You're trying to achieve some goal. Because of this, we often try to skip to that end because we don't want to waste time getting there. We want to build those modern web applications without learning about how apps were historically made, or we want to write the clean idiomatic code without ever needing to learn how to refactor and writing that ugly code to begin with. We want to know how to structure our applications without having to figure that out as we go. We just want somebody to tell us the correct way to do it, and we want to move forward. We just don't want to waste time feeling like we were learning the wrong way to do things. We want to focus on what gets us paid and move on. I think it is a mistake to rush to the end. Now, that seems counterintuitive. You're probably thinking, if I know I'm going to use this technology on the job or technology skill, whatever you want to replace there, and you know that you can learn that technology now, isn't it best just to focus solely on learning that technology? And I would say no. Focusing solely on that is a mistake. And the reason I say that is because you cannot write the code you will in 5 years without the experience you're going to gain along the way. Rushing to the end and focusing solely on these technologies and skills you expect to use in 5 years is a mistake, because rushing almost always skips all that experience entirely, or at best you kind of skim it and have a basic understanding of all the different things you would have learned in those 5 years, but you don't really have a true understanding of it. So, some examples. You need the knowledge and experience of writing bad code to really understand what makes code clean or idiomatic or easily maintained code. But without actually seeing some bad code, it's really hard to appreciate what makes something good, clean code. Another example is that you need to understand the trade-offs between different code structures to really appreciate which one is going to be a good fit. And this is a question that comes up all the time in Go, is how do I structure my applications? And it's hard because people want you to tell them one specific way, like put these files here and these files here, and that's how all your code is going to be structured. But the reality is different structures make sense for different size teams, for different projects, and for a bunch of different approaches. There are a lot of projects I have where all the code is in one single directory because the project is small enough and it's only me and one other person working on it, so it works really well. But then there's also bigger projects where that would never work at all. And trying to explain that to people can be challenging, but the truth is you need to understand the trade-offs to decide which one is best for your project, because when you start breaking it into a bunch of different packages, it does require more planning, more thinking, and more code to sort of connect those pieces together. Another example is that you need to attempt to write untestable code, or maybe not attempt to, you need to write untestable code to really appreciate what makes code testable. So if you only start with the testable code, you'll see that it's testable, but you won't really get what they're saying when they say this is easy to test or it's testable code until you actually start writing code that isn't testable. And then it's going to start clicking, oh, I see how they changed these things to make it easier for them to actually test the thing they cared about. So rather than rushing to the end, we should focus on making learning fun and productive, understanding these trade-offs that we can make along the way, and building the lasting skills that are going to allow us to pick up any different tool or technology or programming language as we become more senior developers. So that's the goal of this talk, is just to discuss how you can be more effective at learning and different approaches that I think are going to help you. First, learning to code shouldn't suck. I know that sounds obvious, but a lot of people will bang their head off the wall just trying to get through something, whether it's a tutorial or whatever else. They'll just keep banging their head off the wall thinking, if I just push through this, eventually I'll become a developer. And that's not a good way to learn. Go ask somebody that you know who's a developer, preferably somebody who's a little bit more experienced at this point. Ask them how they learned to code. And chances are they're going to maybe smile a little bit and tell you about some interesting project they worked on or some hacky little project that they dove into, and they had no real idea they were going to be a developer, but it was just something they enjoyed and they just kept going at it. Whether it is a magazine that they got every week that had little code snippets that you could have a game in, and you could code the game, and then they would tweak it to sort of see, well, if I change this variable, how does the game work from that point? Or maybe it was a musician who wanted to share his music, and he decided to write a website or build a website using Flash or some other technology. And they dove into it, they started learning these things, and eventually they discovered that they wanted to be a developer. There are countless stories like this that I know of, but very rarely do I hear somebody tell me about a sucky grind that they hated. They just pushed through these tutorials. It was an awful experience, but eventually they became a developer. And the reason I think this matters is because the developers who get a project they like, or find something that they really enjoy, they will code for longer hours. They won't give up when they get frustrated with bugs, and they won't be tempted to just quit and go watch TV or do something else instead. So all of these things basically allow them to really stick with it. And even if they're not using the technology or the tools that they end up using on the job 5 years later, they allow them to learn general skills along the way. They learn logical reasoning skills, just general development skills, and all of these things will eventually help them become a better developer, especially because they're really enjoying what they're doing. Another way to think of this is that it is a marathon, not a sprint. So you might be able to bang your head against the wall and force yourself through tutorials for a while, but eventually it's going to stop working. And you need a plan that's going to last for the long haul, because you need something to last this whole marathon. So part of this is discovering what you love. At US universities, I don't know if this is the same everywhere, but I kind of assume it is, they are designed so that students can change their major within the first few years, usually the first 2 years, without any major setbacks. So if somebody comes in studying math, they can decide, oh, I really like this computer science class I took. Can I pursue computer science as a major instead? Or maybe you go in thinking that you're going to be a computer science major, and you discover that you really like physics and want to build rockets, and that a lot of the things overlap because you still use computers or something with the physics stuff. And that's cool. You can go do that. All of the early gen eds and the classes that you'll take are kind of designed to allow this as well. They are designed so that you get a little bit of taste of everything, and then you dive into your specific focus for the last 2 years you're there. And I think with coding, wandering should be encouraged as well. So when you get hyper-focused on just learning the things for your major, if you're at a university, or with coding, if you get hyper-focused on the technologies and the tools that you think you're going to use on the job, you don't explore these other topics, and you don't find the things that are interesting, but then you also don't really understand what else is out there and what other approaches there are to problems. So some examples of, or that I've seen at least, of this happening where people dive into it is, I've talked to some people who thought they were going to go in and build back-end code. They were going to write APIs for web servers, and that's what they really thought they were going to do. But as they were doing it, they kind of discovered that they really loved building UIs. They loved JavaScript, and they loved seeing these visual feedback and creating components that had cool animations. And as a result, they just became front-end developers instead. And I think that's awesome that they found something that they really liked. I've also seen people that thought they were going to get into building web servers and building front ends, or maybe being a full stack developer. But as they got into the DevOps side of things and making their server really resilient, they discovered that this is what they like. They like making a server so strong, or a server setup, I should say, so resilient that Godzilla could come to New York and crush all the buildings, and their website would still be up and running. And that's what some people like to do. So they dive into that, and that's awesome too. There's a ton of different fields you could end up going down, whether it's security, or building web servers, or building Internet of Things type devices. Whatever it is, you can't really discover what that is without exploring a little bit and without allowing yourself to try out different technologies. So I'm not saying that you should try everything under the sun. At some point at a university, you have to pick a major, and the same is true with coding. At some point, you need to pick a language or whatever else you're going to learn and stick with it. But that doesn't mean you can't taste a couple of them and get a feel for which ones might be good for you. And related to this is learning about alternative approaches. So when you're hyper-focused on the end game and just learning one specific language or set of technologies or whatever it is, you generally don't wander enough to really understand or appreciate the approaches that other people take to problems. And as a result, when things need to change, or when people want to apply some different technique to sort of solve a problem, you might not understand it, or you might not appreciate the benefits of it. So I want to talk about an example. You don't need to understand the code from this example, but I want to show it to you because it's a case where my experience with Go made it easier for me to understand some changes coming to the React world. So we're going to start with this React code. This is a friend status. So in React, you create these components, and these essentially turn into the HTML you see in a web browser, but they're done with JavaScript in a way that allows you to make them dynamic and interactive and a little bit more useful for users in a real application. The code I want to look at here is the component did mount and the component will unmount code. So what's happening here is the component did mount runs when the friend status is shown on the screen first, and the component will unmount is run whenever that friend status is being pulled off the screen for some reason, whether it's the user going to a different page or whatever other reason. So the two things this does is the component did mount handles everything that needs to be done to register this component and make it work. So in this case, it's subscribing to the friend status so it can update it whether the person's online or offline. And then this could be separated by a bunch of code. And then we have the unmount code, which is for everything this component needs when it unmounts. And in this case, it's just unsubscribing from that status so that it doesn't have a memory leak. At some point, React introduced what's called hooks. And this use effect is one of the hooks. And in this, the way it works is you first run the code that is the equivalent of the component did mount section. So the code for rendering the component. And then the second bit here is the cleanup code, the code that happens when the component is going to unmount. But rather than running it, we return a function that has all the cleanup code in it. And you don't really have to understand the benefits of this right now. I can tell you the major benefit here is that all of this code gets grouped together inside of one use effect. So you don't have a bunch of code separating it, and it's easier to manage and maintain. But for a lot of people, this change and the reasoning behind it was hard to understand. But coming from Go, I've actually seen this pattern a lot, and I've come to appreciate these benefits as I've been writing Go code. So because I had the experience in another language and this alternative approach taken, I was really able to appreciate and understand the changes coming to the JavaScript world as a result. And I think a lot of people just didn't have that background, so it was harder to understand. But luckily, the people creating React must have looked at other approaches or explored other approaches because they decided this was a good one to bring to React. Next up, we have planning isn't doing, or put another way, plan but don't overplan. So imagine you're taking a road trip. Think about how much planning you would do for this road trip, whether you're going cross country or you're driving from New York to Florida or whatever it is. Think about how much planning you would do and how much is too much planning. So in my mind, I'm thinking you might pull up some maps and you might plan a few stops along the way. So if I'm going from New York to California, I might decide I'm going to stop at Mount Rushmore and pick a couple major stops. If I was hauling like an RV or a camper of some sort, I might use a gas app to sort of help me pick some good gas stations along the way because you have a really big trailer. Or if you know that you have family in a certain area, you might decide, okay, we're definitely going to stop here along the way. And even before you go, you might do some things like checking the pressure in your tires, gassing it up, a couple things like that. But chances are you aren't going to take the entire engine apart and make sure every little thing's working fine. You're probably not going to, go into these really fine details of looking at every single gas station along the way and trying to predict when are we going to need to stop to pee? When are we going to need to get coffee? When are we going to need to get gas? Or if you have kids, you can't predict those things, so you don't bother with it. In coding, I see people make this a related mistake. They overplan so much that they try to plan every little small step along the way, when in reality, you can't plan for all those things. You could research for weeks trying to figure out the best programming language for your career, for salary, or whatever else. You could research for weeks looking for the courses that cover all the things that you think you're going to need to learn. And you're thinking in your head, well, this is going to save me time because I'm not going to waste time learning the things I don't need. You can just do all these things to try to make this optimal path. But in the end, you are just planning when you're doing this. You're not actually doing, you're not learning to code. And more often than not, just diving in or doing a little bit of planning and diving in is what's going to be the most productive. And this is a really easy pitfall to fall into because planning feels productive. Whenever you're looking up programming languages and trying them all out, as I said, you should do a little bit of exploring. And this feels productive because you're jumping into these languages and you're really seeing a lot from it. But at some point, if you keep doing this over and over again and you never actually decide on, if it's a university metaphor again, if you never decide on your major and focus on it, you never actually graduate and go on to get a job. So coding is the same. You need to eventually decide what you're going to focus on learning, and you need to sit down and actually put in the effort to learn how to code and to learn those skills that you need along the way. Now, I know this is going to seem a little bit weird because some of you are thinking, don't you create courses? Don't you want people to research and decide that your course is the best one? And the truth is no. I think my courses are great for a lot of people. I don't think they're necessarily the only way to learn how to code. I don't think you should sit around researching for days trying to decide what the best course is. I think you should find the language or the things that you're enjoying and maybe sample some courses, and the one that you enjoy, go ahead and dive in. And if that's my course, awesome. If it's not, that's fine too. I just want people to really jump in and learn how to code and get the enjoyment out of it that I do every day. And that, I think, is more important than somebody trying to find the right course, than trying to force people to use my courses and claiming they're the best course or they're the right course for everybody. So stop procrastinating, pick something and jump in and start learning from it. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you today, is that just, if you've been planning for far too long, stop doing it and get out there and start doing the work. So related to this is practice, practice, practice. You can't just follow guides. You can't just read tutorials. You can't just watch videos and expect to learn how to code. All of these are tools that are helpful, but at the end of the day, you need to actually be coding and putting in some time yourself to learn these skills. There's a bunch of resources for this as well. So Gopher sizes, as I mentioned earlier, was meant to be exercises that will help you go from just writing some sort of basic Go code to building all sorts of little tools. I think there's 20 different exercises there, and we build something new or we build on something from a previous exercise in every single one. So you're constantly challenging yourself to do a little bit more, to read some more documentation, and to apply different coding patterns as you go. But that doesn't mean you have to use Gopher sizes. There's Exercism, there's HackerRank, there's a custom project of your own, and there's just so many options out there that you really don't have an excuse not to get in there and practice. And if you're looking for another option when you're learning, it's to use an iterative approach. So what I mean by this is, if you're taking a course, you can go back through the course, iterate over the course a second time, but this time think about how you might build something similar to what's in the course or tutorial or whatever it is. Try to build something similar, but not quite the same. So if the course taught you how to build a Reddit clone, maybe go through and see if you can build a Twitter clone, which is close, but it's not quite the same. And it'll really force you to apply these skills you've learned along the way and make sure you really understand them. In addition to that, you can also go back to code you've written, and you can see if you can refactor it now that you understand different parts of coding and in different coding patterns. You can see if the code you wrote months ago or weeks ago or whatever could be refactored to be maybe more testable or cleaner or more maintainable. This also applies to the structure of your code. As you write more code and you're trying to figure out different app structures, maybe go back to some old code and think, would I change how I structured this now that I know a little bit more? You can do this with tests, with pretty much anything, whether it's your tests, your app structure, just code in general, old courses, old tutorials. All of these things should be iterated on. I wouldn't use these resources as a one-time thing, because you'll get way more out of them if you're willing to check them multiple times. You should also try to learn with others. The first thing I would say is join a study group if you can, whether that is a Slack study group or an in-person or a video chat one. In-person is probably hard right now, but whatever your options are, try to find some way to make yourself more accountable by learning with others. And even if it's not like an accountability thing, if you just have a group where you can ask each other questions and answer questions for other people, that's really going to help solidify what you're learning. Having to take a concept that you've learned and you understand and then teach it to somebody else will challenge your understanding and make sure you really get it better than almost anything else. And on the other side of that, if you're asking questions, you might learn more than what was originally taught in the tutorial or course or whatever you're going through than you really, or if you misunderstood something, somebody might clarify it. And sometimes just seeing another person's perspective, if they learn the material and they teach it to you in a slightly different way because that's how they understand it, sometimes that'll make it click for you. So all of these benefits of a study group are really, really valuable. And I would definitely recommend trying to learn with others if you can. Now, if you can't join a study group, there are other approaches. The first one is probably just to write a blog or notes or something like that, summarizing what you're learning. Now, you could share it with friends or the internet or whoever you want, and people can interact with you a little bit about what you're writing and what you're learning, but you're probably not going to get quite the same level of interaction. The one upside to this approach is that you can always refer to your own notes in the future and update them and, sort of tweak them as you progress and learn more. And I do this all the time. I look back at things I wrote in the past whenever I'm trying to refresh myself on a topic. And I think that it's awesome because usually I'm the best person to explain something to myself. So future me always appreciates something that, present me writes. All of these things put together will make you a better developer. You're going to have a more well-rounded understanding of the tools and technologies you're using. You're going to be better suited to evaluate trade-offs and to decide which technologies are best for any specific set of circumstances. Rather than always using the same tools, you'll have the knowledge and the skills to decide, well, maybe this isn't the best tool for this job. Maybe I should check out this other thing. And I understand that taking this path of wandering a little bit, exploring a little bit, and not just jumping straight to the final technologies and tools you plan to end and just hyper-focusing on them. I understand this path is going to make it feel like you're not progressing as quickly, especially early on. But I just want you to remember, again, that learning to code is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's something you're going to continue to learn with, and you don't want to crash and burn halfway to the finish line. Learning a couple skills, getting a job, and then burning out a year or two later is not what you want to do. You want to have a solid foundation that's going to prepare you for a bright future as a developer. Thanks for listening to my talk. If you want to get in touch, you can email me, john@calhoun.io, or I'm on Twitter @JohnCalhoun. Thanks.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much, John. John, that was a recorded video that John did for us, but he is on Gopher Slack right now answering questions. I do want to take a minute to see if there's any new questions that came in. I think the two that came in that I saw through Gopher Slack were, where can we register for John Calhoun's newsletter? Just to reiterate his answer, that was signup.calhoun.io. And I'll share it in the Zoom Slack as well. Let's see. There was another question about, are there any courses for AWS related to, or any recommended courses related to the AWS SDK? There was no direct answer to that other than, well, actually I lied. There was a Free Code Camps, seems to have some reference. Let me just do a quick check to see if anything came through the wire while I was speaking. But I know Johnny Borkerset also has some videos on AWS Lambdas, and he might, so I'll try to fish up that URL and share it. But I think there's a few exercises out there that we might be able to point to. Just a quick check, any more questions? So this is, here's a question. John, I'm gonna post on Slack in case you're not available to answer, but what to do for a senior guy who still wants to innovate and learn, and yet the business side against this due to budgets and time constraints. And then, yes, I'm going to post that in Slack, and I think there's a few other talks coming up that might be able to answer that. So definitely stay tuned. All right, and without further ado, I'm going to hand it back to Angelica.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Really, really excited about the speakers we've already had, and we have some great ones coming up. The next one is Bill Kennedy, founder of GoBridge, who's going to be talking about GoBridge, their initiatives, and the ways that you, as our Gopher community, can get involved. So I'm going to pass right over to you, Bill.
All right, everybody can see me and hear me. Woo! Look at that. Man, we got such a good group here. We've had some really good talks too. But I get to change the topic a little bit because I want to talk about GoBridge. And you may not realize this, Wilken, you may not realize this either, but I have never given a talk about GoBridge, even though we've been working. Our GoBridge has been around, I think, since about 2015. I've never given a talk before, so this is exciting for me. Let me kind of briefly tell you how we kind of got started here, and then I'm going to walk you through what we have on the website, because my goal is to get you excited about maybe contributing more and more of your time in the Go community. And as I like to say, 4 hours a week can change the world. Right, Wilken, am I saying it? Angelica, am I right? 4 hours a week, and you can change the world. You just got to give it. You got to give those 4 hours. Come on, you've got 4 hours. You can do it. Okay, so let's get started. I went to a conference back in 2015. The conference was called MagnaConf. It was there in Mexico. It was a nice conference. What was nice about this conference for me was it wasn't necessarily a Go conference. It was a conference with a bunch of people. And I met someone named Sarah Allen, the brilliant Sarah Allen. And she had already started a company, or I should say a non-for-profit organization called Bridge Foundry. But she is also one of the founders of Ruby Bridge, right? Go Bridge, Ruby Bridge. So you may have heard her from there. And she gave a talk, and I started talking to her afterwards. And the idea of Go Bridge kind of came all together in Mexico after her talk right there. And I got home, and I jumped all over it and found a lot of people over the years to help. And that's really what I want to talk about with you. I want to see if you can find something here that I want to share with you that maybe you're interested in helping in. Now, our main core is really around Go education. So we're going to do that. Let me do 2 things here as I jump in. I'm really bad with introductions. I just like getting into it. I get all excited. Wilken's sitting there laughing at me right now because he knows what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. We got a little, oh yeah, I want to do that. Desktop. Here we go. What do we got showing? I don't want that one. I didn't want that. I wanted this right here. I'm always on the fly. Look, you're gonna listen to me. You're gonna come to my classes. I'm on the fly. I gotta stay loose here. Look, here's a little information about me. I'm really bad. I'm so bad at slide decks that I just use like Markdown. Okay, this is where I'm at in my life. In fact, I'm so bad with design, I'm not even allowed to talk to my own designer. So take a little picture of that if you want to try to reach me after the talk. You got my Twitter, you got my email. Email's always good. And a little information about the training material and the company, Arden Labs. Okay, great. What I really want to do is head over to the GoBridge GitHub repo. And you can get to this repo by just typing gobridge.org. Gobridge.org will actually just take you here right now. And what I've done here on this About Us page is given everybody really a lot of the information you need if you want to start getting involved a little bit more in the Go community. And so, I'm not going to read that. You can see what our core mission is. I really told you what that is. It's really around education. If you have an idea that circles around education, I am interested. I want to help promote what you're doing, whether that's finding you resources, whether that's finding you sponsors, whether that's finding you money. Like we'll get it done. Okay. And I also want to kind of share with you the things that we do today that you may not know about. And you might be involved in something already, and you might like, oh, I didn't know GoBridge can help. So let's kind of go through the current initiatives. I love talking about this stuff when I can. Now, one of the things you might not know is that this is a GDN event, right? It's a Go Developer Network event, and the Go Developer Network is right now really responsible for running all of the meetups. So if you're a meetup organizer, then you should be part of the GDN. And one nice thing about that is that the GDN is paying for your subscription fees. But also, I think we've done a nice job on Slack to also create a community now of all the meetup organizers to help each other and to be able to find speakers and things like that. And if you don't have a meetup that you're going to regularly or in your area and you want to start one, come to me. We'll get you started on Meetup. We'll get you in the GDN. We'll help you find those speakers. And GoBridge is helping the GDN right now with this program. So this is really a joint program between GoBridge and the GDN. So meetups all around the world for Go. We're managing that and adding new groups and people all of the time. Now, one of the very first things we started with was this one right here, running and managing workshops. Now, since we really haven't been able to meet together, a lot of this has died down. But myself, Johnny B, and others over the last few years have been traveling around the world, showing up on weekends and giving workshops. And if you're someone who loves to give workshops, then I think this is the program for you. We have also on our GitHub account a workshop space where you file an issue, and then we start to help you get that workshop organized. And I don't want you to think that we can't do this virtually. So please, if you really would love to share 2, 3, 4 hours, an entire day of material with people in the Go community, then come reach out to me. Reach out to me. I will help you with the logistics and everything else we need. We have Zoom accounts that we can leverage, and it's all there. We want you, I would love for you to just have to show up and start teaching. So we've been doing that really from the beginning, and I really can't wait. I don't think it's going to be this year, but next year, I'm hoping to get back out there on airplanes in front of everybody doing all this again. So please, if workshops are interesting. Now, here's the other thing. All right, here's the other thing. Maybe you're not the one who wants to teach it, but you know a bunch of people that really would benefit from an entire day workshop. Reach out to me. Reach out. This is what GoBridge is for. We'll find you that right teacher. We'll find you the materials. Right? That's what we hear. So workshops for me are a big number one in what we do. Now, mentoring. So last year, I started sending tweets out asking people, if you wanted a mentor, come and reach out to me. I will find you a mentor. And over a period of 3 weeks, I think I connected 100 people together. Well, that was a huge amount of work. I was working emails every day for a couple of hours, and it was difficult for me to manage. So one of the things that we did near the end of last year is we put together, or we stood up a mentoring platform now. So if you go to mentoring.gobridge.org, there it is, right there in your browser, you can now register and kind of have an intake form, either being a mentor or a mentee. There's a little code on this page that you can decide. If you want to be both, you need to create 2 separate accounts. But what's nice here now is that it's kind of all automated. So you can come into this system. If you want to be a mentor, please, this is the best place to go right now. I've got, I think, about 170 people looking for mentors. 4 hours a week can change the world. This could be where it is. And a lot of people, when they ask me about the mentoring program, they're like, well, Bill, I don't know what to do. Look, I've got a ton of materials that you can work with. You just have to ask me for that information as well. But the thing is, you really want to kind of find somebody that you think you're compatible with in terms of the profile, have a 20-minute conversation with them, get a general sense of how you think that mentoring should go. And then you can also always come to me, and I will also help you with the material. And this is an asynchronous sort of relationship here. So 4 hours a week, you can kind of set it up. You can set expectations 2 or 3 months, and you've helped people move forward in their lives and their career. We've heard these stories already from the last 2 talks. And, you know, exorcism is a place where you can do this too. John's materials can be used here. This is about you having a one-on-one relationship with somebody else, helping them improve what they're doing. And that mentoring platform is there to help you find somebody, or if you're looking for someone. But I'm working hard to try to get more people to sign up there. Okay. On this next thing, growing underrepresentation. I don't know if you know this, but when we had in-person conferences, this is crazy. When we had in-person conferences, when you looked at the percent of people who showed up at our conferences that were women, it was 5%. It didn't matter how small, it didn't matter how large, it would be 5% of that population that showed up was women, and a lot less if you were a person of color or another race. It's mind-blowing. And we really want to, and we have tried over the years to get that number to go up. And I'm not going to say that we were successful, because at least by the time that we from the time that we were still able to go to conferences, we couldn't really find ways to get those numbers up. And so this is something I'm really interested in. How do we get more participation from minorities or people who are underrepresented? How do we get that? How do we create spaces that are safe? How do we do things? And so I can tell you one of the things that GoBridge is doing in a hope that we can help here. We provide, and if you're going to be running a conference of any kind this year, send me an email. We will provide financial support to conferences. We will buy tickets. We will help you in your quest of having a more diverse panel. We will do all of these things. We will help you with scholarships so we can increase that diversity in the conference. This is something that we've, as an organization, have had to learn how to do over the last 3 or 4 years. And so if you're new to running a conference or you've been struggling with that, please reach out, because we've been really focused on this and we have ideas and we want to help. You're not alone in that. And if you show that you're really serious about this and you're working hard to increase the diversity in your events, then we're just going to double down and help you even more. So if you're looking at running events, if you're running conferences, you're doing these things, come to us, because we want to help you, as long as we're really focused on how do we grow that underrepresented minority participation in that event, both the speaker side and the participation side of it. Now, this is one thing that I'm really excited about that we started doing last year. I can't pronounce this, but there was, last year, I sent out a tweet saying, I want to support any Go initiatives that are going on. If you have an idea, let me know. And this gentleman from Romania reached out to me and he showed me how he had set up an organization that was teaching kids in Romania, like 13 junior high to high school kids, how to program these Raspberry Pis. He had a whole curriculum set up, and he had families that he was helping, but he needed money to buy the Raspberry Pis, which cost about $250, everything that we need. Say about 250 US. So because of the amount of work he'd already put in and had proven it already with a couple of families, we went in and I think we bought 15, we supported 15 families. So we're right now in the middle of supporting 15 families with this program. And in another month or two, we're going to evaluate how that is going. And if it's going really well, we're going to jump in and help another 15. Like, that's what we're here for. So I'm really excited. And this is an example of when I say, if you're doing something or you want to do something, reach out. This is a great example. Right now, if it's something brand new, I'm going to be telling you, we got to do this, you got to do this, we got to write this up, we got to do this. There's going to be a lot of work up front, but I promise you that on the back end of all of that work, we'll be there step by step, and the lives you're going to change are amazing. So this gentleman is changing lives in Romania, kids, junior high and high school kids, and they're writing code in Go on these Raspberry Pis. Absolutely amazing. Okay, now, one of the last things here is administration. I don't have a huge amount of administration, but there are things around administration that I do have to deal with at least every week. All right, there's at least a couple hours a week of, and outside of the accounting side, okay, we run a Zoom platform that anybody that's part of the GDN or anybody that's performing any sort of Go event like this one today can leverage. We have one account where we can do a 500-person webinar, and then we can have as many kind of meetings that we want. So there's an intake form, and I've got like 3 of them right now in my inbox, and I got to set up the Zoom account and make sure it's the right date and time and get it out. This is administration stuff that happens every week. I'd love to get some help with that. We just launched the mentoring platform, and there's some work there to do too, the administration that I'll be honest with you, I'm slacking on right now. I got to get back into it next week. But I think there's opportunities there to help grow the platform, to help with matching and it both externally and internally. And I would love to find somebody who wants to come in and help really improve kind of what we've started already on the mentoring and the mentoring platform. Again, maybe 2 hours a week there with your new thoughts and ideas. I think the mentoring is huge, and I'd love to see us grow that. So it's like two things, and the accounting side, which I'll keep doing, but that are happening every week. And then obviously we have Slack administration, though we've got a great group of people who just handle that now pretty much day in and day out. And then anything new that we decide that we want to do, we always need help. So you got to reach out to me. And as I tell Angelica all the time, it's not about being able to say yes. What is it? It's about being able to say, yeah, no. At some point, we're going to keep pulling you in. I don't want to scare you there, but say yes. I want you to say yes right now. And then I'll tell you when it's time to say no. Okay, let me just share how much time. I think I got a few more minutes here. So I want to show you a couple more things here. Another thing we do, you may not realize this, but another thing we do is help anybody who wants to give a talk or a presentation. It's really scary when you're doing the first time. You don't know where to begin. So what we have here on this page actually is a cool little Google document that really can help get you started. It gives you information, what selection committees are looking for, and then I or somebody else will work with you on this document. You better plan to have a couple of hours, but we'll work with you on your conclusions and introductions and titles and target audiences and your key. Basically, when this document is done, it'll take you a couple of hours. You're ready to start submitting your talk and those CFPs, and then you're really ready to start building those talks out. And here's the other thing, all right? I was gonna say, so if you have an idea, reach out. Well, guess what? Let's say you just want to give a talk and you're not even sure what to talk about. Reach out to me. I will sit with you. I'll have a 20-minute conversation. We'll flush that talk out of you, and then we'll work on that. So no excuses. And I know it's scary, but what's beautiful about the GDN is we have the meetups, and that also gives you an opportunity to practice and work that talk before we get you on the big stage, okay? But if you're interested in giving a talk, even if you're not sure what you want to talk about yet, you just know there's something there you want to share, you please reach out to us, and we're going to help you. You can always reach out at support@gobridge.org, bill@gobridge.org, and we're there. Okay, I think everything else on this piece of paper I've said. Yeah, we've got our list there. I think so. So I'm going to stop that right there. Okay, so I think I've kind of covered the big things here. And again, I'm asking everybody who's listening to this to try to this year find 4 hours a week to do something for someone else here, maybe not even the Go community, but if you want to focus on the Go, come reach out to us here at GoBridge, and we will help you. We will find out where your best fit is, what you're going to be interested in, whether it's workshops, you want to give a talk. Giving a talk to me is helping the community. You have a blog post you need review, reach out. That's helping the community. New content, new people. Come on, you're tired of listening to me. I've been on stage enough, right? We need new blood on stage, new thoughts, new ideas. Yet, I want you to know we're here to help you see that. So you want to teach a workshop, reach out. You want to give a talk, reach out. You're writing something, you need to reach out. That's what GoBridge is here for. You don't even know what you want to do, but you want to do something, reach out. That's what we're here for. So we'll try to make sure that wherever we're posting all of this stuff, you can get us. But gobridge.org, bill@gobridge.org, support@gobridge.org. We've got some channels in Slack as well. I'm always walking around. When I say walking around, I'm running around Twitter, Slack. I'm always around. Never hesitate to reach out, and we'll have that conversation. I think that's all I want to share. And I think Wilken and Angelica can attest to everything I just said in terms of being out there to help.
For sure. I think if you take one thing away, reach out to Bill. Even if you have nothing in mind, just reach out, and through that conversation, you'll realize you did want to do something. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Inspiring and wonderful to hear from you as always. We have a few quick questions that I wanted to flag. The first is, are there any full day workshops coming up that people can attend? Are there any events that you're running or a part of that you know of that people can join?
Right now, no one has stepped up to organize a workshop. Now, one of the things I did want to do is run some Ultimate Go and an Ultimate Service event Q1. So if someone is interested in stepping up and doing the logistics and getting everything together, then I am interested in showing up in front of a camera, and we'll put that event on. We just need somebody to step up and organize it. Okay, that's it. So I'm here. I'm waiting. I got no emails. Let's go. Dale, as they say in Miami. Wilken's laughing. Dale.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As most of you know, but I just want to reiterate, if you have further questions, feel free to ping those in the Learn Go Meetup Slack channel and Go for Slack, or in the Zoom channel. Bill's going to be hanging around for a little bit more in that channel, so feel free to ping him there, or ping him directly if you want to have more of a one-to-one chat. Thank you so much again, Bill. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate the time.
I'm going to pass over to Wilken to intro our next wonderful speaker.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bill, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining and the talk. Love the enthusiasm. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Paul Joy from myitcv.io. He's the founder there. The Tour of Go gives us an excellent introduction to the Go language. But where do we go next? You need to understand the Go command to take those next steps. Wouldn't it be great if you can have some sort of interactive way or guides to kind of help you online and get started? So in this talk, Paul would introduce playwithgo.dev, a series of hands-on interactive browser-based guides, demonstrate the user experience, and talk about how people can contribute guides to the platform as well. Once again, that's play-with-go.dev. I'll share the link. Paul, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks for confirming, and just checking as well that everybody can see everything okay on screen as well. Please shout if not. Thanks so much to the host today for organizing this event. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I've got the amazingly challenging task of following Bill Kennedy when giving a talk. I don't know that I'm going to be able to inject the same level of enthusiasm as Bill has, but Bill's a wonderful example and has been a real leader in the Go community. So thanks, Bill. But here we go. So I'm talking to you today about, so you've completed the Tour of Go, what next? Quick bit of background on myself. As introduced, my name is Paul Jolly. I'm the creator of playwithgo.dev, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm currently working on the Q project. Also created GoVim, which is a Vim plugin for working with Go. I contribute to the Go project and a number of open source Go modules. I'm the organizer of the Golang Tools working group, and I was previously an organizer of the London Gophers meetup, where we've had Bill come and speak on a number of occasions. So as I said, I'm working on the Q project now. If you are in the configuration space at all or want to look at data validation, head over and take a look at that. It's an open source project that's based strongly on the Go project. This is a picture of a sleeping baby. Fair warning that during my talk, the sleeping baby may no longer be sleeping and may wake up and interrupt our presentation here. So apologies for that in advance. Also, fair warning that there is some live demos in my talk today. As with all live demos, these can go wrong. So please bear with me if that does happen. I have got some backup content in case, but just fair warning on that. So the great thing is that we're talking today about how Gophers from all levels can continue their learning journey. My talk today is a talk for Gophers of all levels. I think that's important. to stress at this point, because there is really something in playwithgo.dev for all Gophers of all levels. So why are you watching this talk today? Hopefully you're interested because you found Go in some way, shape or form, and you're interested in the Go programming language and you want to learn more about it. Maybe you're not quite sure on where to go next with your journey in the Go programming language. Maybe you found Go as a result of the Go.dev website, which is a new hub that pulls together all the sort of the key parts of Go, the project, linking to documentation, case studies from companies who are using Go. Maybe you found Go via the open source project, golang.org. Maybe you're interested in contributing to the open source project as well. Maybe you found Go via learn.go.dev, which is a new hub for all the essential documentation and learning material. Lots of the talks we had earlier on from Nils about exorcism, John's Gopher sizes, they're linked from learn.go.dev. It's an excellent place to start your learning journey. Maybe you just like Gophers, and there's plenty of them. Who doesn't like Gophers, by the way? Maybe you're local, and I'll put that in brackets because, of course, in the world we're living in today, there isn't really a concept of a local meetup at the moment. But your local meetup, Bill spoke eloquently there about the power of meetups and the way they can introduce you to like-minded people, people with whom you can share ideas, people who can challenge you, lead you along different paths of learning. Meetups are an excellent way of doing that. Least of all because the proximity that people who live in your local area are often a very good resource, because actually they're easy to get hold of and easy to meet in times when actually we can meet up. But the online meetups, some of these local meetups have shifted to being fully online now, and there's still excellent presentations, presenters who can give you ideas on how to continue your learning journey. But there's a fairly high chance that actually, if you looked at Go even briefly, you will have ended up looking at the tour of Go. Now this, if you haven't seen it, the link is at the top of the slides here, and all the links will be available at the end here. This is an interactive browser-based, so you just fire up your browser and go to tour.golang.org. It's an interactive tour of the Go programming language itself. It's divided into a number of sections that explain the language. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, there's an interactive element where you can actually write code and learn the language as you go. And this is really beneficial because there's actually zero setup required in this situation. You can just get started and just go at your own pace as well, learning the language step by step. It's very well structured. And over the years, contributions from folks have helped to improve the content, the structure of it. So it's an excellent starting point. But it's a starting point and it covers the programming language itself. So what if you want to go beyond the programming language and actually start writing something with Go yourself? Where do you go next? We talked earlier on about the fact that there's learn.go.dev, which provides you links to lots of different resources. But maybe you're not quite sure yet. You don't really want to go to the hassle of setting something up locally yourself. You want to just get a feel for what writing Go code looks like. And this is where Play with Go comes in. It's a hands-on set of interactive guides for programming in Go. The idea being that it's, again, browser-based, interactive like the tour of Go, but it's going to that next level of introducing the tools that are required to work with the Go programming language. It's the next step after the tour of Go, therefore, but it embraces all those really good qualities of the tour of Go, of being interactive, because that's what makes things fun, and it just can be entirely self-paced as well. As I mentioned earlier on, it's also aimed at all levels of Gophers as well, and we'll see that later on. But for those people who are new to the Go programming language, it's a really good way of taking that next step from the tour of Go to getting your hands dirty with the actual tools required to write Go. It's something that is by the community for the community, and we'll talk about this a bit later on as well. But even though it looks like an official Go project website, it's actually not. It's an open source project that is sponsored by the Go team. And it is entirely open source, and it's by the community, those folks who are not part of the core Go team, but anyone who is in the Go community, even those folks on the Go team, can actually contribute to it as well. It's based on Play with Docker, and my colleague Marcos, who helped write Play with Go, was one of the original authors of Play with Docker. And as I said, it's sponsored by the Go team, in particular Carmen, and who has given huge support to this project. So a big thank you to Carmen. But that's enough of me talking, because I've threatened a live demo, and this is where it could go horribly wrong. So here we go. So hopefully everybody can see this demo as well. This is us actually now on the Play with Go guides index, which is where we can see the guides that are currently listed on the Play with Go website. It's broken into sections here where you can see you've got a start here section followed by next steps, and then a what's coming in Go 116. Each of these little cards here represents a link to a guide, gives you a rough indication of, broadly speaking, how long it might take to get through that guide. But these are very just broad indications, because as I said, there's no stress. You can go entirely at your own pace. There's a fairly limited amount of content on here, but as I said, this is Play with Go.dev is just getting started, and it's something of an experiment as well to see whether this sort of interactive learning environment actually works for people or not. So that's the guides index itself. Oops, excuse me, we've clicked on a slide there. Now let's actually have a look at a guide itself. And this is the first guide, which is Getting Started with Go. This is based on an official Getting Started tutorial that you will find through the learn.go.dev documentation site. It links through to the official golang.org documentation. So here is a Play with Go guide. On the left-hand side, you've got what looks like the guide material itself. And on the right-hand side, let's just tidy this up a bit here. This is an interactive terminal that is connected to real remote compute resources. In fact, this is a virtual machine that is running within the Google Cloud. On the left-hand side here, as I said, we've got the actual guide itself, and we've got these code blocks here, which if we just hover over them, you might be able to see that this is clickable as well. So as we're going through this guide, this is just an introduction here to getting started with Go itself. So first of all, we've got this code block here. Well, it's not a code block, it's a command block, excuse me. If we click on it, it actually executes in the right-hand side. Right-hand side, I can even type in this command as well if I want to. But the left-hand side is guiding us through in a step-by-step way what the particular guide is interested in introducing to us. In this case, it's just literally the bare basics, the bare bones of getting started with Go. So here we've just printed the Go version. We can also print what directory we're currently in at the moment. We can create ourselves a new directory. Now we're just going to create a file, hello.go. And as you can see, it just presents a little status message to tell us that that file was successfully created. And guess what? Go is available within this remote virtual machine. And so we can run that example as well. Fantastic, it's printed hello world to us. Just moving a bit further on, here now we're going to actually incorporate an external package within our little program. It's a fairly familiar one to those people, fairly familiar example to those who have read some of the Go documentation before. It's a quote package that allows us to include some nice pithy quotes in our output. So let's just change the file that we created here. Again, we've updated the hello.go file, and you can see after clicking on the code block on the left-hand side, it's updated in our remote session. Initialize ourselves a module, then get the quote package. Just wait for that to download. And now run the new example. So now we've incorporated, and we can just confirm this. Here is our updated Go file over here. And this is what we just ran as well, which is using this new quote package. So here, this is with zero setup, we've jumped into an interactive tool, an interactive guide that is demonstrating to us how to use the tools of the Go programming language. In this case, the Go commands. To create a module, create a very simple example that imports an external package. We've used go-get to get that package and then run it finally. So you can see it's fantastically, you can go at your own pace, but at the same time, the interactivity lends itself very well to the learning of the tools. Let's just leave this guide and go back to the presentation. So what do we just see there? As I said, there's zero setup required here. So much like the tour of Go is a zero setup introduction to the language itself, this is a zero setup introduction to the tools that are required to work with Go, but using real compute resources as well, which is incidentally why you need to authenticate with playwithgo.dev if you land on the site. There are real compute resources here, so we want to be careful not to abuse the sponsorship that we've had, because otherwise it would be an open compute resource. So this really reduces the barrier to getting started with Go. Once you've learned the language, you can get yourself familiar with the tools required for the programming language too. And as Carmen Ando said in her closing keynote of GopherCon 2020, it's sites like this and tools like this that are really designed to help try and encourage the next 1 million, 2 million, 4 million Gophers. Get them started and familiar with the language in an easy way in different formats of presentation of this sort of material as well. So some people might not like this sort of interactive tutorial. That's absolutely fine. But for those who do, and they enjoy the tour of Go and they enjoy going at their own pace, it's a really good, easy way of getting started. This can even run on mobile. So if you just want to have a quick interactive walk through how to create your own module, it's fantastic for that. As I said before, you can go at your own pace. And the focus of all these things, as John mentioned in his talk earlier on, is this should be fun. And so this might not be for you, but if it is, fantastic. It is all about being fun. And as I said, playwithgo.dev is an experiment. Please give us feedback if there's things that you think we can improve. Let's have another look at at another demo. This is a slightly more involved one where we're actually going to create a module and publish a module as well. So not only, as you saw in the first demo, we actually created some files in our remote virtual machine and we ran those. Fantastic. We also used GoGet to get an external module that was downloaded from the proxy. So this remote virtual machine is fully connected as if it were our own local machine, which is great. So let's just quickly skip through this bit here. We're just printing out the working directory here, creating ourselves a directory for a module that we're going to publish. We init that module with GoMod init. We can just prove to ourselves that we've actually created the go.mod for the module. We create ourselves a file, greetings.go. That's a package which will have a very simple function, hello, which will give us a nice greeting in return when we call that function. So now we've created our package here. Let's just improve it a tiny bit here by using, and you can see here in the playwithgo.dev guides, if we're updating a file, it highlights where the changes are made in the file. So as the reader, you can easily understand, as you follow through the guide, what's actually happening. And then as the documentation here will refer back to these bits in bold here to tell you what has changed. So here you can see the file has been updated as we've clicked on the code block. Now what we're going to do is initialize a Git repository on our remote VM. We've added a remote in that step as well. We're going to add the files and create a commit. And now we're actually going to push this commit. So where on earth is this commit just been pushed? Let's just come back to that in a second. Now we're going to create another module very quickly to use that hello module, the greetings module, excuse me, that we just created. We're just going to create GoMod init, this new module, and we're going to go get the greetings package, the greetings module that we just published. So this is pretty impressive because with zero setup, zero local setup, not only have we been able to use the Go tool itself, but here we've also published a real live Go module as well, with zero accounts required on GitHub or any other code hosting system. And so for someone who's keen to understand how to work with the Go programming language and its tools, this is a fantastically easy way. And look, we just click through these. Again, you can go this at your own pace, but we click through this fairly quickly. And you can you already get a feel for what the life cycle of Go modules is, how things work end to end without having to go through any local setup. So let's just leave this guide for 1 second and go back to the presentation. So what did we just see there? As I said, we published a real Go module to a remote source code repository. That really does give a strong feeling of how programming in Go should work. And if you're just getting started, sometimes that's a bit of a daunting hill to climb. You can read lots of documentation, but until you actually see it happening in front of you, it's a little hard to wrap your head around. Yes, there are some video presentations that explain it, but if you're able to click through a guide again at your own pace, that's a much easier hill to climb sometimes. Again, zero setup required for any of this. So let's take a look at another. This is a slightly different example of a guide here. And this is aimed at those Gophers who have slightly more experience. Because not only is Play with Go a platform for those who are just getting started with the language, it's also a way of demonstrating and showcasing things that are useful in the Go programming language. And we'll see one of these now with a new feature that is just about to land in Go 1.16 when that's released. And that's called module retraction. So this guide does introduce module retraction, and that's just for those who are familiar with modules. If you accidentally publish a version of a module, you can then retract that version. So it's a totally different way, a totally different style of guide, where this isn't so much an introduction to Go, the language itself, or any of the tooling. This is showcasing something that is coming up in the Go programming language. And this kind of guide is not limited to things that the Go team produce as part of the Go project. Tools that exist out there, like Static Check, for example, could also showcase themselves on playwithgo.dev. So think to yourself, what would you like to understand better that would lend itself well to this sort of presentation? We'd love to get your feedback. And if you go to playwithgo.dev, you can link through to our Twitter account there, or the GitHub project, where you can get in touch with us by raising an issue. Because we're trying to understand what kind of content works well in this kind of interactive learning platform. Let's jump back to the presentation. As I said, so what did we just see there? This showcasing of features is a totally different use of Play with Go, but we're open to all sorts of things. Just so long as it is Go related, we'd be very interested to consider what it is you'd like to see presented there, whether it be a guide that is a real tutorial, or something that is like Showcase, or something totally different. So what other content lives on playwithgo.dev? As I just said, really anything Go related. But let's just look at the key focus points here. Core Go tooling, Gopher for formatting your code, Go test. John Calhoun mentioned that he would be interested in writing a guide, for example, that explains to people how to use Go test. That's just a basic primer on how to start writing tests in Go. And you can sort of easily understand now how in an interactive presentation that would actually work. Go build, Go vet, all the core Go tools. It's a really good platform for introducing modules, as we saw, because you can actually publish modules as part of the Play with Go platform. And that, as far as other tutorials is concerned, is a real win. Because a lot of those get to a point where you need to push something to a remote source code repository, and they say, at this point, git push and ... There's a sort of a bit of a gap left there. But with playwithgo.dev guides, you can see it's a full end-to-end experience. You can click through and see the process from beginning to end. I mentioned Static Check. Tools like that help with code analysis are fantastic things to present and understand via an interactive tool like Play with Go. So please let us know, what other tools do you want to see as part of guides and on the site? As I said, we looked at a demonstration of a new Go feature. Honestly, any sort of demonstration would lend itself well to this sort of interactive presentation. Please get in touch and let us know. So who can contribute to playwithgo.dev? Absolutely anybody. I mentioned before, it's an open source project, even though it looks quite official in that we're using the Go styling. It is entirely open source project. It's entirely separate from Google as well. So that way, the really is very open to anybody contributing with a very generous license that's part of the project as well. It's a content creation platform as well. So with every guide that is part of playwithgo.dev, it's fully automatically tested. So we can be very confident that at any point in time, each of those guides is entirely reproducible. And so as an author of the content, it helps, the tooling that we have on the platform helps. And as a user of the guide, someone who's clicking through, you can be really confident that it's actually going to work. We're in the process of writing a guide that explains how to write a guide, which should help those people who are considering writing content for playwithgo.dev. So what plans do we have for playwithgo.dev? Well, one of the key things would be getting an editor integrated in the browser, and VS Code is going to allow us to do that. So that's something we're looking to get to in 2021. If people would like to sponsor that effort financially, or indeed contribute expertise to that, please do get in touch. We'd like to extend it to be multiple platforms. As you've seen at the moment, the remote session, the remote virtual machine, excuse me, for each guide is Linux-based. But there's actually nothing really stopping us having that be a remote Mac OS session or a remote Windows session. That just, again, requires a bit of investment and a considerable amount of time in that case. But it's something that's entirely doable. And as Bill Kennedy has given feedback on this in the past, we're going to see a lot more Gophers in the years to come be coming from a Windows background. So that sort of support would be key. And we're also open to adapting the playwithgo.dev tooling to write guides and documentation for other tools and other projects. It would be hosted in an entirely different setup, but that's something we would happily consider. So here is a screenshot of what it might look like to have VS Code integrated within the browser. It would be fantastic to just be able to click on a code block on the left and have that populate a file within VS Code in the remote virtual machine on the right-hand side. So how can you get involved? Well, as with so many Go projects, one of the best things to do is actually to use the package, use the module, whatever it is. In this case, use the playwithgo.dev website. Help review content. If you spot issues there, please raise an issue with us on in the GitHub repository. Happily fix it. Or if you want to contribute a fix, please do that too. There's many different ways to contribute to the Play with Go project itself. As you've seen, there's multiple parts to it here. The website and the front end. Marcos and I are absolutely not experts on that, and so any help would be greatly appreciated. The infrastructure side of things. Maybe you want to help out with the tooling that is involved with from a guide author's perspective. Maybe you're keen to support the Play with Docker project on which Play with Go is based. Or perhaps you're interested in writing content. You have an idea for a guide. Whatever it is, please get in touch via Twitter or raise an issue with us on the GitHub repository. So that is playwithgo.dev. That is the end of my talk today, I think. Yes, I'm just checking. Please visit the site. Please give it a try. And if you have any feedback, we would love to hear about it. And I'll very happily take any questions now, and we'll certainly hang around in the Slack channel afterwards.
Paul, amazing talk, amazing content. Thanks so much. There's a few questions that came in, so I'll go ahead and go down that list. So the first one you kind of touched on already, maybe a little bit with the VS Code plug, but the first question that came in is, can we modify the file on the browser and save it onto a compute resource?
That's a really good question. At the moment, there is fairly limited capability for that because we don't have an editor. So there is a very basic editor for those who are comfortable with using Vim or Pico. We can put those terminal-based editors into the remote compute session for now, but getting VS Code is critical, right? For those people who are new to the language, having a terminal-based editor is not really acceptable. So that's where we're looking for additional sponsorship and additional support to get the VS Code integration working.
Awesome. The next question that comes along is Play with Go only for beginners?
No, absolutely not. So that was the idea behind showing you the guide, which introduced the new concept of module retraction in Go 1.16. So there can be really quite advanced topics that are presented in guides. And if people have ideas for what questions they would like answered or content they would like, please let us know. We're just getting started on the content that's there, but you can, of course, as with any tutorial or blog post, you can pitch it at any level. And it would just be a case of us actually separating and clearly indicating these guides are for sort of beginners, intermediate, advanced, grouping it however we like, and perhaps tagging it with different, tagging each guide with different topics as well to help people find what it is they're after.
Awesome, cool. I just want to plug that I did take one of the modules on the Golang CI linter on there, and I thought it was really great, interactive, and a good sort of takeaway, especially for someone who doesn't use it on a regular basis. So thanks for that.
That's kind of
yeah. The other question that comes through is, who pays for Play with Go.dev, as the compute resources are certainly not free?
That's an excellent question. Very generously, Carmen Ando and her team have sponsored the project, and it's therefore Google who are paying through sponsorship for the compute resources. It's incredibly generous of Google, but as we're looking to grow Play with Go.dev as well, we'd also be interested in other sponsors stepping forward as well, particularly maybe those from a Microsoft background, if I can drop that name in there, because of course we will also get the expertise as well. If we're able to host a Windows-based VM, that would be fabulous, because of course that's, as Bill gave some feedback to us, we open up an entirely new world of Gophers there who are coming from a Windows background.
Awesome. And then the last question I have for you is my personal question, actually. Can you share some thoughts on what type of content you're looking to see on Play with Go, specifically this year? You sort of mentioned VS Code, multiple platforms, but I'm curious to know, what are you hoping to see land on the platform this year?
Yeah, so from a content perspective, I think we'd really like to properly cover off the Go tool itself, the Go command, make sure that people are comfortable with each of the subcommands of the Go command. Go modules. Go modules is quite a daunting space if actually you've never dealt with packaging and versioning code before. And so giving some really bite-sized guides there, but then for every aspect of Go modules, because there are quite a lot, making sure that people have somewhere that they can go to see in that sort of really beginning to end process, okay, how does this actually work? Wrap their head around it by seeing it and clicking through it on a command by command basis. I think at some point as well, if we can get Visual Studio Code integrated, we'd also like to include some sort of guides that talk about how to use Go Please, which is the editor plugin that enables full editor support. So if we can have a VS Code in the browser with Go Please running in it, it starts to get incredibly rich as an experience.
That would be amazing. So awesome. Well, looking forward to it. Again, thank you for joining us today and for the talk. Amazing stuff. So look forward to playing more with Play with Go and hearing from the community as they add on to it. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You got it. All right. Cool. With that, I'll hand the mic back to Angelica to introduce our next speaker.
Who is in fact you. So I have the absolute pleasure of introducing your wonderful host, Wilken Rivera. He's going to be talking about learning Go through open source. So programming languages require practice, patience, and tons of application, but that doesn't mean you have to do it in isolation. In his talk, Wilken's going to share with us his journey, learning Go through open source, and how contributing to these open source projects can be a platform for learning at all levels. So I'm going to pass it over to Wilken.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Angelica. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Let's see. Okay, cool. Does everyone see what I see? Learning through open source?
Yep.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, thank you for tuning in today. For those just joining in, my name is Wilken Rivera. My talk is titled Learning Through Open Source. Originally, it was titled Learning Go Through Open Source, but after going through this whole journey, I realized I learned so much more than just Go, so I decided to change the title. Today, I'll be sharing my experience. Today, I'll be sharing my experience with learning Go through open source, specifically through a project called Exorcism, which we've heard of already. And like I said, I'm a big fan of it. So for those that are joining in right now that may not be familiar with Exorcism, the short version is that it's an online platform for folks who are interested in programming to level up their skills through practice and mentoring. So if you haven't already checked it out, I do recommend it. In this talk, I hope to share my learnings, what I learned from this experience, and also provide some tips on what I think, on how I think the open source community can be a platform for learning. And I think someone early on, and I apologize, I think it was Denise or maybe Dennis, I apologize if I got the pronunciation wrong, on how someone, in the business, sort of constrained by business time, with business constraints, how they can kind of level up or learn any language. So this might be something for you. All right. So a little about myself. My name is Wilken Rivera. I'm based out of Miami, Florida, here in the United States. I am a senior software engineer at HashiCorp, working on the Packer project. I spend most of my time writing tooling for the cloud in Go. And when I'm not at work, I'm either reading, working with the Go community, such as events like this, or spending lots of time with my family. I have 2 girls that are very active. So a little heads up, this talk is intended for folks with existing programming experience, and I'll explain why as we go through the talk, but it definitely is applicable to first timers. So don't feel like you have to tune out because there's some learnings that you can get from this, but I definitely recommend having at least experience with one programming language, Git, and are comfortable with reading other people's code. So quick overview of the talk. Why open source, my path to Go, learning through open source, my takeaways, how to get started for first timers, and then my closing slide. So the great question, why open source? So learning a new language is tough, right? Especially when you don't have a consistent way of learning and sort of applying what you've learned. They say that the key to learning a language is to sort of immerse yourself in it. Put yourself in situations where you're forced to interact with the language to help improve your learning experience. And to be honest, like spoken languages, the same advice is applicable to learning a new programming language, like we heard in some of the previous talks. Programming languages require a lot of practice, patience, and tons of application, but you don't have to do it alone. Open source projects, I think, offer a wide sort of view into new communities, a virtual space, if you will, where folks of all walks of life can communicate, share ideas, opinions, lessons learned, and help each other grow within that space. Yes, it's true that there's a lot of development going on in that space, but really that's just a fraction of what's going on in the open source space. So, a little about how I got started. I didn't start right off the bat in open source with Go, so I kind of walk you to that story. Sorry. So I started off by attending Gotham Go. It's Gotham Go, for those that don't know, it's New York's yearly conference. I believe it started back in 2014. And I went to Gotham Go not knowing any Go at all, but a good friend of mine was into Go and he asked me to join. So I followed along. At that conference, I definitely, I was interested in learning Go a bit, but didn't really know where to start. So, I spent a lot of time on the train sort of thinking. I lived in, for context, I lived in New York City then. I now live in Miami, I've been here a year. So I spent a lot of time on the train sort of thinking about what would I write, and where to get started. So I took the usual path that one takes, the tour of Go, Go by examples, the Go programming book, Bill Kennedy's Go in Action book, a bunch of little exercises here and there, but I still had trouble immersing myself in the language, right? To be honest, Go was not something I was working with professionally, so finding projects and making time was a little hard. But in 2016, that's when I had my aha moment. I attended Gotham Go for a second time and things changed. I had an opportunity to see the talk by Mind the Gap by Katrina Owen, and it's where she actually introduced the Gotham Go to exorcism. And it was at that moment that I told my friend, like, oh, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. So after Katrina's talk, I immediately signed up for exorcism and began working on solving the problems. So little context, exorcism at this time didn't have any mentorship or mentee aspect to it. It was just purely here a bunch of exercises, go ahead and write the code. So I started very early on. And before Go, I was writing in Python and Ruby. So I spent some time, on the exercises, writing them in Ruby first, and then translating them into Go to kind of help me build that confidence that, hey, I can solve this problem. I carved out, I had one child then, she was about 3. So I carved out my weekends, a 7 to 10 a.m. slot in the morning, where I would go to my local coffee shop. For those that are in New York, there's this coffee shop in Forest Hills called Martha's Bakery. Highly recommend it. You can just tell them you know me, they'll take care of you. And every Tuesday night I would, write some Go code. So during the weekend and during the, on Tuesdays, I was all pure Go, and it was something that just like I couldn't get enough of. I was really hooked, right? So, which really is sort of the predecessor to, or the, yeah, to the motivation, I guess, to the next part of this journey, which I was really curious about exorcism, right? So I've contributed to open source prior to this, but really small. It was in Ruby, and it was, just writing tests, or, I'm say just writing tests, but it was adding tests to a project. So I was already familiar with contributing to open source, and we use GitHub at the office. So I was really familiar with that. So, I was really curious about exorcism, and I thought, oh, maybe I could help. I can learn a little more by contributing. So I introduced myself to Katrina Owen. I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous there, just sending her an email, but she seemed very friendly when I met her at Gotham Go. So she gladly responded and pointed me to a few good issues under the CLI repo and the contributing guide. And after reading through those guides and getting myself familiar with the code base, I opened up my first official PR, my first official Go PR, which took me a little bit to submit, but I submitted it. And that PR is sort of had 47 comments. And I think there was so much within that one PR that really just sort of set the tone for the rest of my journey and the things that I value now as an open source maintainer. So my first thing is really in a Go specific way, I learned about testing. After my first PR, I waited, just refreshing for the code review to come through. Yeah, I know that you get notifications on GitHub, but I was very eager to see what comes through the wire. So got my first review, and it was a really kind review, and it provided lots of guidance. One of them starting with testing. The first lesson learned was how to write tests for a small CLI app, and how to use the HTTP test package. Up until this PR, I was working with exorcism and using the using the unit testing package there to learn how to write tests. But at this PR, when it came to this PR, I was asked to write some testing for an API endpoint that I needed to mock out for the versioning tool. So it was a good way to sort of learn from code that Katrina had already written, and then get introduced into the HTTP test package, and it gave me an opportunity to ask questions. I didn't feel like I had to learn it on my own. So with that, I think one of my biggest sort of recommendations when coming across a new code base is always start with the test. Take a look at what is being tested, trying to get an idea of how to how the code, how the functions or the various types are being leveraged. And I think that's a good way to sort of introduce yourself into the code base. My second lesson really is not Go specific, but it was, I think it was sort of a very interesting concept that I've heard of but never really thought too much about. So before Go, I was big on keeping code as generic and reusable as possible, referred to as dry, an acronym that means don't repeat yourself, try not to duplicate too much code. And there's nothing wrong with keeping things dry, but sometimes being dry or too dry can make things a little harder than they need to be. So from this comment that I got from Katrina, I went down the path of undrying my code, if you will, and learned a little more about Go's philosophy on writing simple and effective, maintainable programs with the idea that, hey, a little duplication is okay. And I definitely learned this, big tidbit was, if you see someone's code and there's a lot of duplication throughout it, really try to understand why it was duplicated before trying to dry it up, right? Try to gain as much context as you can before you start changing things. And then the big sort of third takeaway was readability. I think this is stressed really highly within the Go community about readability above all, right? And making sure that you write writable code. And I think Bill would attest to that. Definitely, we spend more time reading code, shall I say, than writing code. So it's important that code is readable and doesn't hide any context. So, I like this comment because while it doesn't really go into the details of the code itself, I think, it really gives a perspective about focusing on readability, even from something as simple as a comment, so, and even the way the suggestion, if you will, on GitHub was framed, right? So I think giving rationale behind the suggestion really helps make the reader, or the person getting the review understand when and why the suggestion or the command should be applied. And we'll hear in the Go community that it's very, something is not idiomatic Go, right? But sometimes we don't really hear why, or why the approach that was taken, is wrong, right? It's just saying it's not idiomatic it's not really enough. And I think Dave Cheney, the Zen of Go, if I sort of talks about that, and I think that was his motivation for that. So I got a little glimpse of that early on from this one comment, and as an engineer, prior to learning Go, I think I was in the game, I don't know, 7 years already, and I was not one to sort of provide a lot of context. I was that person who just assumed that the reason for my suggestion were sort of common knowledge. So it was safe to say that I was wrong. So I really learned the importance of adding context and the idea of just leaving a good comment on within GitHub and the reviews. And a nice little tidbit, I learned about this idea of a nitpick, a nitpick comment on GitHub. Sometimes, especially when at work, when you would leave a comment, it would be a suggestive comment, but people would think like, oh, you're asking me to change it, or an official request. And this use of nitpick was like mind blowing, because it's like, oh, like I have the option to apply it or not, if I want to. And over the course of the years of contributing to Exorcism, there were a lot of like, hey, here's a nitpick, apply it if you want to, if not, feel free to merge. And I thought, that was a nice little tidbit to have. And it's something, again, that I apply now. So we fast forward a couple of years. I was already actively maintaining to Exorcism. I was an advocate for the project. I was part of this team, a part of the community, and this was happening all outside of my office. In my office, I was still writing Ruby and deploying infrastructure to AWS. Go was happening outside on the weekends and on that Tuesday night. I like to say, I was learning how to write Go. I was reading people's code. I was interacting with fellow Gophers from around the world. I was, really big on going to Gotham Go and meetups and different conferences. I would say that, I just wasn't part of the community. I was helping build it with the contributions that I was making to Exorcism. And I took every opportunity that I could to really share that knowledge, having that feeling, that sense of purpose. I branched out to the GoBridge team, and try to figure out what GoBridge was about and how I can get involved. I actually TA'd my first TA session with GoBridge was with Johnny Borcaset out in Baltimore, which was a good 5 hour, 5 hour drive from home, about a 6 hour train ride, but it was worth it, right? I learned a little more about Go, and more importantly, I learned about the importance of having a safe environment for folks to learn. Interesting fact, I actually met my future manager for HashiCorp at this event. So, after this GoBridge training, I eventually gave my own very first GoBridge training. I joined the open source group at Condé Nast, which was my previous employer, and helped sort of push that along. As you can see, hopefully you can see in the image, I was sponsoring Exorcism. I joined the Golang NYC group, hosted a few of them there. Bill was kind enough to make me official part of the GoBridge team, and give me the opportunity to do things like this. And finally, I became an open source maintainer for the HashiCorp team. I started off with Terraform, and now I'm officially, developing on the Packer project. So I like to sort of, the picture on the right there of that ThinkPad, that's actually my laptop that I use and that I'm presenting from, because those stickers present the journey that I've taken, right? The cloud guy is the sticker, the little cloud with the wave. That's my kid's sticker for me, that she ensured that I had it on my laptop, and I love probably the best sticker on there. But Exorcism, that's the initial logo for Exorcism that was created. And, my contributions to Logstash was my first official PR that I opened, Gotham Go. So this laptop, I like to carry it with me because it really kind of tells that journey that I took. So all that, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, right? So what did I learn from this whole experience of contributing to open source, aside from more Go code. I learned that, that learning a language by writing on an active project helps keep you motivated, right? And I think we all know if you're working towards something, it helps sort of keep you accountable. But when you have other people that are working on that project with you remotely or physically next to you, it definitely helps keep you motivated and pushes you forward. I also found that just reading other people's code was super helpful, right? Because it really, as an engineer who's been in the game for a little bit, we're kind of set in our own ways. So it's really helpful to see how other people do things and, the decisions that they make and learn from that and sort of, take an opportunity to reflect and say, hey, could I do this better? Or can I do this differently, right? I think, better is, up for interpretation. Another thing I learned was and the importance of learning from the guidance of code reviews, right? I think, we get code reviews and sometimes it's like, all right, just get it reviewed so we can get it in. But there's so much bits of knowledge in there that, that get shared and just dropped really quickly. So I think it's really important to pay attention to the code reviews that are coming through the wire. Engage yourself in the code review. If you're joining a open source project for the first time, really engage yourself in the code review process to see what you can learn from there and how you could add value yourself. One thing I like to say, if you don't understand the code after you've done reviewing it, I think that's a good comment to leave, right? If it's hard for you to understand, then chances are it's going to be hard for someone else to understand, and possibly the original author, once they're done, working on that code. So definitely feel encouraged to leave that comment. Another thing I learned is welcome feedback. I think, again, as an experienced engineer, it can sometimes be hard to hear that your approach either missed the mark or that the code review that you gave wasn't all that helpful. We're human, so we're continuously learning. So try your best to just be open and welcome any feedback that comes your way, even the not so good feedback, right? There's always something good to take from it, but it's always worth being curious about the feedback and challenge yourself to improve, and by improving, that don't necessarily mean that you have to improve yourself. If someone gave you, a bad comment or, on a review, it's an opportunity for you to speak to this person and say, hey, this comment kind of came off a certain ways. Was that your intent? And it really kind of gives you an opportunity to improve this other person, thus improving your environment, thus improving you as a whole. And I think the last thing, which sort of ties into that last point, was really, I learned to be kind, right? To quote Rodney Dangerfield, it's hard out there. So, it's always good to seek to be kind and open in your interactions and help foster a really safe and encouraging environment, right? Taking a step like putting out a comment or code into the internet and not knowing what's going to happen to it, it's daunting. But it doesn't mean that the experience has to be unpleasant. So, and I think that starts with you being kind, and then you trying to ensure that the folks that you're interacting with are being just as kind, if not kinder. And I will say that your interactions in the open source world can prove very fruitful for future endeavors. So, treat it as you would anything else you would in your life that you want to be a part of. Yeah, this is a little weird. I'm just like talking to this screen. I can't really see anyone. So, for first-time contributors, I was there, and I think one thing you may not know is that your inside is Gode, right? Really, we as maintainers and contributors are sometimes too deep in the weeds, writing the code that we, or the docs or the tools that we work with on a daily basis. So it's not always, should I say, friendly to newcomers, right? There's a lot of context that you may not have. So if you find yourself on a project that you're really interested in, you want to jump in and you're having a hard time jumping in, leave that comment. I'm sure that, the maintainers or the folks that are running the project would appreciate it, because at the end of the day, the community is only a product is only as vibrant as its community. So we want to make sure that has a very low barrier of entry. With that, I say the same holds true for docs, documentation. If you want to start there, if you're not quite ready for the code, and you start a documentation, take a, if something seems incorrect or incomplete, leave a question, post a comment. There's a good chance that the maintainers have missed something, or maybe, you have some insight that we don't just have yet, right? So I think it's always good to post that up. Again, same holds true for features. We find a lot of comments on the Packer project that sort of come our way where we have the feature documented one way, but it behaves differently, right? And sometimes that may seem like a bug, but it turns out the docs just weren't updated, right? So that's an opportunity for you to contribute, an opportunity for you to meet the team, right? And I think I say the team because I think anytime you contribute to open source, you have the potential to start working with a new team. So you want to treat it that way, right? You are essentially helping these folks better their product and better your user experience. So think about the features that you come across. Do they work differently? Have things changed? If you happen to know Azure, for example, has changed their upstream API and we're using something different, please speak up. I think that's super helpful. And I would say that learning, I kind of mentioned this before. It helps if you have experience with a programming language or comfortable with reading other people's code, because it helps you sort of get started. But if you are learning how to program through open source for the first time, that can be a little tough, right? Especially if you select a very active project. But I don't think that it should stop you from contributing. Right. I'm going to talk about some of the tips on how to get started. And I think if you use those tips, it could help you start to level up a bit on the project, on the language. And then also, I really encourage you to take events like this, right? Reach out. The people that are here at this meetup, reach out to them. This is your community. Start the opportunity to network and see how it is that you can learn from them, and vice versa, right? Like I said, insight. A beginner's insight is always gold. So there's lots of opportunity to learn. So feel free to ask questions, and just leave comments, right? Nice comments, please, but definitely ask questions, because there's no such thing as a stupid question. With that, I'll say this. I say contributing to open source can be very intimidating, especially when you don't know what to expect, right? So this is where just reading active or recently closed pull requests can help, right? You can get a sense of what the communication is like on this project, and you could get a sense for the people involved, right? But the truth of the matter there is that open source projects are not all the same. Some are really good to be a part of, there's a lot to learn, and some are not, but I think one piece of advice I like to give when you open source is that if you find yourself on a project that you're not really happy with, or by happy I mean you feel like you're not learning, or the contributing aspect doesn't seem all that nice or conducive to motivate you, congratulations, right? You just sort of learned what project you don't want to be a part of, or what environment you don't want. Maybe congratulations is a strong word, but it's definitely a learning opportunity, because you get to see what you don't like. And if that happens, definitely take the opportunity to say thanks to the maintainers for the time, and move on, and you can start somewhere else, right? That's the beauty of the open source communities. There's so many of them, and you can get your feet wet in any project, and in various different ways. So highly encouraged to reach out and try to get involved. For those that are inspired and want to get started on the open source side, definitely try to start by finding 1 or 2 projects of interest, preferably something that has a small footprint. I think the more code, the more context you kind of need to have to get acclimated. So I think if you start small, that'll be great. And if you're a fan of a big project, that's okay. I think just try to narrow down the scope of the contribution to kind of help you keep focused and reduce the time spent on the context. It's like, as John said, it's about, the journey to the destination, right? I'm sure, I apologize, John, I'm sure I got that wrong, but it's about the journey, right? More so than the destination, and things will happen slowly over time. So, as you come across this project, really think about how the project is behaving, right? So, learn how the team works by reviewing their active PRs, look at their closed PRs, get a feel for the communication style, look for sort of comments that they leave, do they have some general expectation when it comes to testing or naming conventions? Just try to get yourself familiar with what they look for within the pull request. Over at HashiCorp, we have a few of our projects have documents about what does a good pull request look like. That's a good document to read so that you can, kind of get yourself started. And then once you figured it out, whether it's a bug, an enhancement, or documentation, start the, looking at the contribution guides and make your first change. I think that, that initial sort of leap may seem, it's maybe a little difficult, but once you do it, it's going to feel great. And, you'll have the opportunity, or hopefully it'll feel great, but you'll have the opportunity to really start to meet and work with new people who could essentially become your new teammates in the future. I know there's lots of projects we generally hire from the community, and it's because we get an opportunity to see what you bring to the table. Not when I say what you bring to the table, I don't mean like your coding skills, but more so about like how you interact with teams remotely. How do you break down problems? How do you communicate with the community? So there's so many different things that really show that when you work in the open source space, that I think that you can benefit from by jumping in. So with that, I say thank you for your time. And today, and listening to this talk, this is a picture of me and my daughter at that infamous coffee shop. So after, the 10 a.m. slot, the time was up, her and my wife would come and join us for macaroons and cakes and muffins and all types of things, to sort of celebrate the 3 hours of coding. So, I really just kind of wanted to put that up there. If she was here next to me, she would gladly say hello and welcome everyone from the community. She's a big fan and a big part of my growth. So again, the name is Wilken Rivera. I'm happy to be here today. If you want to reach me, you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Wilken Rivera. On GitHub, I'm at NYWilken. If you want to contribute, we're always looking for new contributors on the Packer project. Happy to help you find your way there. And if you want to talk about any other project, you can reach out to me, Bill. Angelica, anyone here will gladly help you find your way in the world of Go and open source and hook you up with the right connections. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really enjoyed your talk. We have a few great questions along with, honestly, a load of really positive reactions to your talk. So please go back and look through the comments, both in Gopher Slack and in the Zoom call. But the first one is from Anthony. Would you recommend learning Go if you already know a bit of another language if you're not a developer?
Yes, I think the more languages, that you look at, the more perspective you gain, right? So if I had to make an analogy, I would treat it like school or university, right? You kind of go in thinking, I want to do this one thing, but they give you, they make you take various different classes so you can kind of get a taste of everything before you pick one thing. So to that question, I would say yes, write something small in one language, and then once you get a little comfortable with it, try writing that same thing in Go, right? And then, you'll start to get a sense of what that's like. And then once you learn the languages, the next question is, do I want to be part of this community? Do I want, is this something that's going to help me or it's going to keep me motivated to continue growing? So early on, I think it's always best to start, dipping your toes in different places after you've done like one small thing so that you don't feel like you're just bouncing around. I always find that if you do one thing, when you have to rewrite it, you don't have to think about how to build it because you already built it. It's just translating it.
Awesome, thanks. So the next one is how best to overcome code review fear.
Do it. Just do it. Just do it. I think just be very open. If you feel like you're new to a language, or it's like, or you're opening a project for the PR for the first time, be very clear with them. Say, hey, look, I'm interested in this project. I spent a little time looking at this. This is my first time contributing. Please let me know how I can improve it, right? And I think, the right community will welcome that, that level of transparency and will help you, will guide you. But realistically, the only way to get over it is just to do it and do it more and do it more and more and more, because that's the only way to beat fear.
Well, thank you. We had quite a few questions around like what are some good open source projects to contribute to, how you pick a good open source project. So I wonder maybe after this you could ping some possible open source projects you like, maybe from HashiCorp or externally. Everyone else also please feel free to share other open source projects you think might be good to contribute to, or if you maintain an open source project, obviously please ping there. But I wonder, are there kind of core things that you look for in an open source project that will be good kind of flags to look out for, especially for people who are new to open source contribution, as like, okay, this might be a project that is open to more new contributors?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I'll go back and ping the channel with some recommendations, and for everyone who's listening, please feel free to do the same. Regarding things to look for, I think the first thing is what is the community like for that project, right? And I think you take a look at what the PRs look like. Just look at the communication style and see what type of guidance is being offered. I think if you see that the guidance that you're getting from the maintainer is helping people push things along, I think that's a good sense of that this project is very interested in helping contributors contribute to the project, right? And it's not like, oh, we just have to support this because it's an open source project, right? So I think, so a healthy, dialogue, I guess, if you will, on the repositories and the reviews, the community following, right? I think one of the big reasons for me in Go, so you can contribute to the Go open source project and a lot of the tools that are out there in Go, but I think Go, contributing to Go projects is you're sort of jumping into a community, and it's an opportunity for you to speak to so many different people. So think about the community involved with that project, right? What are they just focused on this one project? Are they sort of branching out? What's their outreach like? So try to look for a project that that has a good outreach, or it's encouraging new contributions. And a good way to look at for is like projects that do spend time, and effort to label things as good first issues, right? That means they want to encourage folks. Often projects that have contributing guides, is also a good indicator, but sometimes those projects that don't have good contributing guides are also, they want that help, right? So that's a good opportunity to say, hey, like I'm interested in this project, but I notice you don't have this. Is this something you'd be interested in me writing? And lo and behold, you have a new friend and go for it, right? So I think there's no clear-cut ways other than good communication and people that projects that look to encourage folks. But feel free, just like the languages, take a dive, open up a PR, open up a question, get a feel for it, and if it feels right, move forward. If it doesn't feel right, say thanks but no thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your talk and your insight. Obviously, Wilken's going to be sticking around for the rest of the meetup because I need him. But also he'll be on the Slack channel in Gopher Slack, Learn Go Meetup, to answer any questions you have. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass it over to you to intro our next speaker.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me go ahead and get myself set up for the next speaker. Sorry. Well, all right, here we go. So our next speaker is someone that I know very dear, and I had the opportunity to work with for a bit. So with that, I would like to sort of take the opportunity to introduce Angelica Hill, who will be playing her recorded talk from GopherCon, which I thought was an amazing talk. Actually, sort of the motivation for this whole session here. So anyone, even a British liberal arts major who once aspired to be an actress and then journalist can become a Gopher. This talk from Angelica outlines her motivation and struggles to master the coding and achieve Go competency during her first year working at the New York Times with the help of a few Go gurus. Thank you, Angelica.
My name is Angelica Hill, and today I'm going to convince you that anyone can be a Gopher. But first, a little about me. I'm currently an associate product manager at the New York Times. I work on the Mercury messaging team, which is the team that oversees the backend infrastructure for all of our emails, newsletters, and push notifications. I spend most of my time working on our backend platform, Helix, which is made up of various predominantly written in Go. I've been at the New York Times for about 2 years, and I've been a Gopher for about 1 year. Before that, I was at Columbia Journalism School, studying to get my master in journalism, specializing in counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and policing. Before that, I did my major in English literature and drama, specializing in Shakespeare at Queen Mary's University in London. And before that, I was at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, studying acting. Not your average Gopher. Yet here I am. My hope is that by the end of this talk, you will have come to the same conclusion I have. Anyone, even a British liberal arts major who once aspired to be an actress, then an academic, then a journalist, and is now in product, can be a Gopher. This talk outlines my motivations and struggles to learn code and achieve Go competency in my first year working at the New York Times, with the help of several wonderful Go gurus. I'll go through the whistle-stop tour, from the moment it all began, into the Google storm, fiddling with functions, sussing out slices, muddling through maps. Then I'll talk you through my first 2 mini projects, Ping Pong and Peanut Butter, before telling you about my first real app and why I chose Shakespeare as the inspiration. Then I'll ask the question, was it worth it? Is it still worth all my time and energy to try to Gopherize? Before concluding with a few takeaways and top tips for all you Go veterans, possible Go gurus in the room, and fellow newbies. So, the moment it all began. As I mentioned, I'm in product management, and my team was working on refactoring our backend from PHP to Go, and wanting to understand the various debates that my engineering team were having, as well as wanting to build up some credibility with the various tech teams that I talked to within. Never had dedicated a real big amount of time to it. I never had made the concerted decision to dive in. So I signed myself up for a 3-month, twice after work class at the product school. This class was daunting to me for a number of reasons. Firstly, because only a few months before I started, I had gone to the Apple store and been told by an Apple genius that the answer was to turn my laptop off, leave it for 10 minutes, and then turn it on again. To my embarrassment, it then worked. But on a more serious note, it was daunting because I hadn't started learning from zero for a very long time. Following high school, it had been about deepening my knowledge, becoming an expert in my field. This was the first time I was going to be starting from practically nothing. So the course went through the basic relationship between client and server, as well as introducing us to a range of different languages, Ruby, JavaScript, HTML. In the first week, I went in nervous, thinking it was going to make me a better product manager. But from the moment I wrote that first H1 tag, I was hooked. Coding ignited this fire in me, this excitement. I didn't just want to understand software engineering. I wanted to be able to do it. This led to what can only be described as a Google frenzy. I Googled every single word I'd ever heard come out of an engineer's mouth. Ruby on Rails, spaghetti code, GCP bucket, interface, as well as Googling every single language I'd ever heard mentioned, Rust, SQL, Ruby, Java, and tried to learn them all. A long story short, it got to the point where I was writing a JavaScript file in my text editor, but I wrote Ruby syntax and tried to apply CSS styling, and there was, I think, some SQL commands in there too. It was a mess. Long story short, I was making no progress. How was I going to learn how to be a software engineer when there was just so much to learn? It turns out being overexcited can sometimes do more harm than good. But there was one great thing that did come out of this Google frenzy, this overexcitedness. I started reaching out to the internal communities of practice at the New York Times and the language-specific Slack channels, asking for help and getting coffees with many extremely talented, interesting people who were willing to help. Out of these conversations, I created a Slack group, wanting to have other newbies get the opportunity to talk to these brilliant people who were helping me so much. This is Learning to Code at NYT, a channel I described as a place for beginners to coding, a channel to get advice, resources, and support as you dive into the wonderful world of development. This channel blew up in a way I could never have anticipated. By the end of the first day, we had about 100 members. The next day, one of the directors of engineering emailed me, the CTO, and my manager about it. By the end of 2019, we had over 250 members, and now we're knocking on the door of 300. We've got some great comments. This is one of my favorite. Learning to code feeds me in a way the Snack channel never can. You guys are the best. I was so proud of this group and the community I was beginning to form within the New York Times for fellow newbies, but personally, I was still flailing. I still had no idea how I was going to progress in trying to learn how to be a software engineer. This was where my first Go guru came into the picture. Marwan, who was a colleague at the New York Times. He seemed to literally eat, sleep, and breathe Go. He had such a passion for the language. I thought, there must be something here. He directed me to the Golang website, started going through the basics with me, and for the first time in my frantic frenzy, something clicked. I could understand this. This felt like a language I could actually learn. So it was settled. Go was going to be my language, partly because of the unbelievably cute Gophers I saw everywhere. So I had my language, but now I actually had to learn it. Looking for help, I turned to the various external meetups, and it was at a Women Who Go New York City meetup that my first Go guru, Marwan, gave the baton to Jonas, my next Go guru. She taught me a new way of thinking about programming that was syntax and code second, problem first. Think of something you want to do, a problem you want to solve. Think about how you would solve it, and then think about how you can use the tools Go has provided to you to solve that problem. She also taught me about functions and how a function is just a thing you can do. You can call it whenever you need to do that thing. It's safe to say after talking to Jonas, I was fiddling with functions for about a week. This is my first function, a narcissistic one, a virtual friend to say hello to me. Now it was on to slices and maps, not to be confused with dictionaries, the irony being my first exploration into maps was writing a map of words to definitions, a dictionary map, as it were. With this next fundamental came another Go guru. Jonas introduced me to Wilken Rivera, who was running the Go New York City meetups at the time. He introduced me to Gopher sizes. Now, the first exercise in Gopher sizes is to write an online quiz. I'm ashamed to say this is the only exercise I have done to this day. However, it did result in about a month-long obsession with quizzes. I wrote quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, longer quiz, funny quiz, Shakespeare quiz, maths quiz, I could go on. So having potted around with a lot of online resources, blog posts, YouTube tutorials, I felt like I kind of plateaued in my learning. My Go gurus had all been wonderful to this point. However, I was feeling bad about the many Slack messages, coffees, email messages I was sending them. I felt like I needed a more focused way of learning. Luckily, there was a Women Who Go and Go Bridges fundamental workshop coming up. So I signed myself up, borrowed a Go t-shirt, wanting to fit in with the crowd, and went. This is where I met my next Go guru, Johnny, who was running the workshop and who actually happens to be the reason I'm here today, having encouraged me to do this talk. So You can blame him later. This day felt like a turning point for me. Firstly, because it made me realize I'd actually learned some things. Many of the basic concepts Johnny was going through, I understood. But more importantly, I was sitting with fellow newbies, many of whom had been coding for years and were struggling as much as I was. This made me feel far less self-deprecating, in that I had truly worried that maybe I just wasn't smart enough to learn code because I was progressing so slowly. But it also showed me how much I could learn and accomplish when I immersed myself for a day in nothing but Go. Following the workshop, I stayed in contact with my Go guru, and he advised that I start working on mini projects that would enable me to try and use a combination of fundamentals together. Out of this came 2 mini projects that I am unbelievably proud of to this day. This is the first, Ping Pong, a program that I described as a program that allows you to play virtual ping pong and tells you how many times you hit the ball. In reality, it was 2 channels that were passing the string ping and pong between each other. And this is Peanut Butter, named after my favorite midnight snack, a program I described as a program that makes you a virtual peanut butter and jelly sandwich and tells you how long it took. Well, in reality, I originally described it as making a peanut butter and jam sandwich, but as this usually resulted in a long conversation with the difference between jelly and jam in the US and the UK, I thought I'd make my life far easier and just Americanize this once. I was so proud of this particular program that it can be found to this day on my GitHub with a README and everything. So after a series of these mini projects, I was told by my Go guru, Johnny, to think bigger. Think of an app you could actually use in the world. Think of a problem that you see and solve it with this application. Naturally, when thinking about what to do, I turned to my first love, Shakespeare. I decided to write a program that would enable the user to choose a title from the complete works of Shakespeare and then choose a word, and my program would tell that user how many times that word showed up in each act of their selected work. Now, it was one thing knowing how to use some of these fundamentals in mini projects, but it was quite another to use them all at once. After about a week, obsessively coding in the mornings, the evenings, before and after work, as well as a few lunch breaks, I finished my program. However, 1, it only worked in the terminal, and 2, it was over 800 lines of code long, and frankly, a bit of a mess, hence why you will not be seeing screenshots of it now or ever. This is where my next Go guru came in, Bailey, who I met at a Women Who Go meetup. She advised that I look through my code and look for places that I had repeated myself, and then write functions to replace those repetitions. She also advised that I look into Go routines and channels. Now, these substantially improved my code. However, I ended up going a little bit crazy with the Go routines and channels. Once I'd finished, I had a total of 189 channels. To give you an idea of what a mess this was, this is what my program looked like after I removed all of the sonnets, all 154 of them. Apparently, it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. I would say I'm pretty close when it comes to Go routines and channels, definitely when it comes to copy paste. As you can imagine, this caused me a lot of issues. Turning to my first Go guru, Marwan, I got a nugget of knowledge that changed everything. You can have one channel that you send all your information to. The feeling of satisfaction as I deleted all of those channels was amazing. So now that I had refactored my code and it was in a place that I was pretty happy with, I wanted to make it into an actual app, a usable web application that I could tell all my friends to use on a local host. Bailey and various YouTubers were my gurus here. I looked at blogs, inspected web pages that I admired, and read all the documentation I could find on the net HTTP package before diving into development. Once I finally got it working and showing up on localhost 8080, I asked my Go guru, Bailey, if she would look at it. She asked that I put it on GitHub, and this opened a whole new challenge, as I'd never used GitHub before. I learned about Git, branches, a few developer best practices, and created my first PR. Long story short, I created the PR, received my first review, first issue report, made the process of making those changes, and created a new PR, got an approval, and merged. So I had my program's basic client-server relationship sorted, but now I needed a front end. And as the Go community had already given me so many wonderful Go gurus, naturally I turned back to the community for my next. I attended a Go New York City meetup where Anthony Stark was giving a lightning talk on the SVG package. Afterwards, he kindly got a coffee with me, and that was where he demystified the relationship between front and back-end languages. He talked me through how to integrate your Go program with a HTML, CSS front end, as well as giving me more information on the SVG package. This got me really excited about diving into two new languages, HTML and CSS. Now, learning HTML and CSS was slightly easier than diving into Go originally, not because they're more simple or easier to learn, but because by this point I had learned not to second guess myself, to just dive into learning. If I needed help, I could ask for it. There were people around me who were willing to help, and I had many HTML helpers and CSS supervisors. So I ended up writing a simple HTML CSS static file, as well as some inline HTML for this part, but I am very much looking forward to diving into the SVG package in future apps. And this is how it turned out. This was my first big milestone. I was so proud. I think everyone I'd ever met saw this app. That's how proud I was of it. So as I moved along the road to become a Gopher, I also wanted to start giving back to both my team and the Go community. Within my team, I took on the task of deleting user data when we got GDPR requests, as well as attending the engineer working sessions and taking on small tickets. This is my first. It was only one line change, but I took the ticket, made the change, put the PR in, got a review from my team, and got an approval. And I've done quite a few of these small tickets since. I also began contributing to the Go community. I hosted my first Go New York City meetup in November 2019. I hosted a Women Who Go 2-day intro to Go workshop in February 2020. And I now help as part of our internal New York City, New York Times Golang group. I hope to host a lot more Go events once we can in the future. So now on to the big question. Was it worth it? Is it still worth me investing all this time and energy to become a Gopher? The journey thus far has been wonderful, filled with challenges to overcome, wonderful people, and helpful resources to turn to. However, it is and continues to be extremely challenging for a number of reasons. Firstly, because writing code or any software engineering is not my job. Therefore, I can't dedicate the amount of time that I feel I need to learn in the most effective way. And secondly, it's the crippling imposter syndrome I still feel. I have no computer science background. I stopped taking maths at 16. And I have this image in my mind of what a software engineer is that, frankly, I don't feel like I fit with. I've doubted myself and have literally cried multiple times when I've not been able to understand or do something. I came to this country from London with no real friends or family, no real community. I spent 10 months building up a community at Columbia Journalism School, only to have most people leave when they got jobs elsewhere. I then started a new job and started trying to build a community there. But it wasn't until I found the Go community that I truly felt like these could be my people. This was a community I wanted to invest my time in. Hence the tears when I felt like I didn't fit in or I couldn't get it. Because the thought of losing that feeling of belonging was absolutely terrifying. It is in these moments I have been most grateful for the Go Gurus and the Go community I have around me. They encouraged me to carry on and gave me the next steps to progress when I felt like I was losing hope. So thank you to every single person I've mentioned, as well as those I haven't. You all know who you are. Now, I'm going to take a few moments for you veterans in the room, you possible Go Gurus. I want to talk to you for a minute about how my Go Gurus helped me. I want to give you some tips if you want to dive into the world of being a Go Guru. Throughout my journey so far, I've spoken to a lot of colleagues and friends, brilliant developers who expressed the desire to help others try to learn code, but they didn't know how, or they worried that they wouldn't be any good at teaching others because many of the things that they wanted to teach to them are now habit. What I'd say to those of you watching who are willing to help newbies is firstly, thank you. And secondly, don't worry about not being any good at teaching or helping. Just by giving some of your time to let someone talk through a problem they're having, a concept that they're struggling to get their head around, or sitting with them while you help them troubleshoot an error or an issue they're encountering, you're making a huge difference. Some of the most beneficial conversations I've personally had with my Go Gurus have not been me sitting while they spoke about concepts, writing notes. It's been me talking through a problem with them, asking my guru questions, and then having my guru lead me in the right direction. So this is my first top tip for you Go Gurus. Don't tell your newbie the answer, guide them and help them come to the conclusion themselves. A simple example of this is something I myself did. When I came to my Go Guru asking about this particular program, I couldn't understand why it wasn't working. Why wouldn't my program run? Now, my Go Guru could have made his life far easier and just told me, you need to delete the string after the bracket. And I would have been happy, my program would have run, and I would have moved on with my life. However, I wouldn't have understood why it wasn't working. And inevitably, I would have had this issue again. So my Go Guru instead asked me to hover over the error and read it out loud, missing return at the end of function, and then asked me to read through line by line what my code was doing. This is a function called greetMe that takes a string, which I have chosen to call name, and returns a string, which will be the program saying hello to whatever name I give it. In this case, my name, Angelica. My Go Guru then asked me what I meant by return and what the program meant by return. This is where the learning came in. Through this conversation, I realized that my program wasn't returning anything. It was printing to the terminal. Therefore, that is why the second string wasn't needed. It would have been far easier and less time consuming for my guru to just tell me the answer, but that wouldn't have given me the opportunity to work it out myself and enable me feel like I truly understood what was going on. Also, this isn't for everyone, but I found it especially useful to talk through my program line by line. To this day, I found it an extremely useful tool when troubleshooting. On to the second top tip. If you're working with one mentee, or perhaps it's someone new to the language or a junior developer, whoever it is, assume they know nothing in your first conversation. Work out their knowledge from the absolute basics. Explicitly state it. Say, I'm going to assume you know nothing and start from the absolute basics so that I can see where you're at and we can start from there. Do you know the difference between a front and back end language? Do you understand the basic relationship between a client and a server? This is a great way to start because it enables your mentee to feel empowered to tell you what they do know. And it also gives them a positive affirmation of their knowledge. It also mediates that fear that many newbies have of asking stupid questions, because you're beginning to speak to them at a level that they can understand. In keeping with this, something that I really appreciated, even when I was talking to a Go Guru for months on end, was that every time I encountered a problem, they would check in on the fundamentals with me first. For example, they would say, Angelica, this issue that you're encountering is to do with pointers. Do you feel like you still have a baseline understanding of how pointers work, or would you like us to go through pointers first before we dive into your specific problem? I really appreciated this. My third top tip for you Go Gurus is to keep your mentee moving forward, helping them continue in their learning and always giving them the next steps. Check in with them. This doesn't have to be regularly. It can be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, every other Sunday. The important thing here is to set them clear times when they can come to you to talk about issues they've encountered. This is great for two reasons. Firstly, because it makes your mentee feel truly supported, like they always have someone to turn to. And secondly, it's a great incentive for your mentee because they don't want to come to you for your check-in and you ask what progress they've made since last you spoke and you say nothing. So the next level of this is setting your mentee tasks with deadlines, almost like homework. This is not going to be great for all mentees, but for mentees like me who love deadlines, this is going to be great. I could go on and on about all the brilliant things that my Go Gurus have done for me. But the main thing is just to be there for your mentee, whether it be a sounding board for their ideas, someone to turn to for guidance, or someone they can vent to about their frustrations when they don't understand something. I've cried more times than I'd like to admit to my Go Gurus when I haven't understood something. And it was those Go Gurus that gave me the motivation to continue and let me know it was okay that I was frustrated. It just meant that I cared. Some great resources that my Go Gurus pointed me towards were Go Playground, Go Wiki, Go Tours, Gopher Sizes, as well as attending Go conferences together and watching Go conference recordings together and going through the content. Not only have I met some wonderful aspiring Go Gurus wanting to help people learn, I've also met a lot of people wanting to help build a more diverse and welcoming community of Gophers. And to them, I've given one top tip, and that is to talk as much as you can about what the Go community has given to you. Whether it be at work, at meetups, at parties, at family gatherings, wherever it is, just use your voice and tell people how wonderful the Go community is. Literally say anyone is welcome of all levels, experiences. It's a community that will support you no matter where you are in your career or your life. That's what I've been doing. And slowly but surely, I brought some brilliant women, minorities, and members of underrepresented groups into this community, many of which I'm so excited to say are watching today, just by being honest about what the Go community has given to me. This goes hand in hand, not just with changing the stereotypical perception of what Gophers are, but of what software engineers in general are. Whenever asking around about other development communities, I really, really value people who will direct me to people who are friendly, helpful, but also are a representation of a diverse community. I'd like the Go community to be like that too. So whenever anyone asks about Go, I always make sure to direct them to someone who has that same vision of diversity that I have. Now, I know that was a lot. So for all you potential Go Gurus, here are your 3 takeaways. 1, Offer to help whenever possible in whatever way the individual needs. A study buddy, someone to bounce ideas off of, someone to review a PR, whatever they need. 2, don't just tell your newbie the answer, guide them and help them come to that conclusion themselves. And 3, use your voice. Just by stating out loud, the Go community is open to anyone, we welcome anyone. You can make a huge impact in the way people perceive our community. And if you say it enough, then maybe we can make it a reality. I haven't forgotten about you Go newbies. So for all you aspiring Gophers and Go newbies, here are your 3 takeaways. 1, truly anyone can be a Gopher. It doesn't matter your background or how technical you think you are. If you have that rush of excitement, that fire in your belly thinking about learning Go and trying it out, you can do it. 2, it's not going to be easy. There will be many challenges, but it will absolutely be worth it in the end. And 3, don't be afraid to ask for help from everyone and anyone. You have so many people around you who will be willing to sit down and help you along the way. Any of the GopherCon speakers this year? My first Go conference was Gotham Go in 2019. I saw Johnny speak, emailed him right afterwards, and he got a virtual coffee with me the next week. Our first conversation began with me asking him, what's a variable and how do I print it to the terminal? In fact, could you please explain to me what a terminal is? Our most recent conversation was chatting through this GopherCon speech. So I hope you've all found this whistle-stop tour at least moderately entertaining. And if you take only 3 things away from the entire talk, let them be these. 1, anyone, no matter what background, can be a Gopher. 2, I hope you've seen how amazingly important and helpful my Go gurus were along the way to keep me motivated, to help me not give up, and to give me that confidence to push forward. And 3, for all you non-newbies, you truly can change someone's life by helping them along their Go journey and being a Go guru just by being willing to help. Thank you. Oh, and side note, I am currently looking for a new Go guru, so if you're interested, let me know.
Awesome, Angelica. As again, I'll tell you, that was amazing talk. Thank you so much for sharing it and for giving it. You know, your story is amazing, so thank you. It seems like, I'm gonna see if we have any more questions. It looks like you've been answering most of the questions in Slack. So let's see if anything came up. Let's see. So we have a question from Nils. Did you find your new guru?
I actually did. I think I found about like 7 new gurus after GopherCon. After my talk, I kind of got bombarded with wonderful, helpful people saying, you know, we'll help you. What do you want to learn? Tell us more about like what the next iteration of your app is going to be. So I listed off so many people in that first chapter. I feel like I'm in the second chapter of my Go Guru journey where I have a whole new slew of wonderful gurus. So yes, but I am always open to more. I'm still very much in my newbie Gopher stage. So if anyone wants to practice teaching, I am a very happy guinea pig. You can practice teaching me.
Awesome. That's great. Looking forward to the second chapter. Another question just came in. Has it gotten easier to locate projects to try?
In terms of like picking a project to work on?
I think so, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of thinking, so since the Shakespeare app, I certainly have now moved away from those kind of small side projects. And I've really been thinking through that question that Johnny posed to me, which is like, think of a problem that you yourself have, or you yourself know is a problem that you have actual users that you can solve that problem for. So for the Shakespeare app, it was like back to my high school days when I was trying to think of like themes for my English literature paper. And I'd go through and read and act and highlight the word love 117 times. Whereas if I had this wonderful app, I could have just, you know, searched it, and boom, I can have a lovely little answer in my literature paper. But honestly, since then, I've been working mostly with my team and internally on trying to help them in small ways and understand an actual working code base. And I'm working with one of my gurus on doing the V2 of the Shakespeare app. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Nice, awesome. Looking forward to it. Well, I think it's 4:10 now. I think first and foremost, I just want to say again, thank you, Angelica. And before you introduce our next and final speaker, I want to thank everyone for sticking with us. I know that time zones make this type of event very interesting, and everyone's connecting at very different hours. So for those that are joining and have been with us all through the whole thing, thank you. And for those that jumped off, thank you. We appreciate having you here, and things will be shared on YouTube on the GoDevNet channel. I'll share that information once this is all done. But again, just want to say thanks for sticking with us. I know it's a really long event, but we're happy to be here. With that,
conference.
yeah, this is a big conference, more than a meetup. And with that, I'll give the mic back to Angelica to introduce our final speaker for tonight.
Awesome. So our final speaker is actually going to be a recorded video. It's Adrian Dolme. I'm very sorry about the pronunciation. His Go story going from C++ to Go and his way of learning more Go. So from software engineering for embedded systems, video games, web, and then to the cloud. In this talk, he talks through his journey to Go as a C++ game developer to become an open source maintainer and a Go enthusiast. Please do still post all of your questions and your comments in our Slack channel in the Gopher Slack. I'm going to tag him and he'll come back when he's online and answer all your questions there.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Adrien Delorme, senior software engineer at HashiCorp on the Packer team. I'm actually working with Wilken Rivera, who you probably heard about today. And he asked me like, hey Adrian, it would be nice if someone like you could speak a little bit more about like how they sort of keep up to date with the tech in Go and how maybe they got to Go. And that's what I'm going to try to talk about today. I think he asked because I first started off as like a C and C++ engineer person, and I didn't get to go like from the get-go. And I think a good way to tell the story would be to maybe start from the beginning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my school studies, and then like my first few jobs, and like try to explain sort of what was I doing there, because I was looking for the right sort of language to pick, and it was a long research for me, but maybe it's gonna be interesting to you, I hope. And for my school or studies, I picked that school called Epitech. It's a school in France, and I picked it because I wanted to become a games developer. Someone offered me a Game Boy when I was 6, and I remember thinking to myself, well, if I become the person that makes these games, then I spend so much time in my life playing video games, right? Well, I wasn't wrong, but I was also a little bit wrong. I'll come back to that later, but this school was really nice to me, and I think it still is, because it's not like so academic, but more like project oriented. You're given projects throughout the year, and then you have to like find a teammate or a few teammates. And so like the first years are very deeply oriented around C, like so you have to make, I don't know, a mini shell, like a shell with pipes and stuff. And then C++, and then you learn tons of C++, which is also a really cool thing on top of C. And that school also was really nice because I could do a lot of internships, and I was doing like sort of these web internships. and I managed to get an internship on a company that was making the computers that reads your car, the info from your car for like your local repair shop. And it was really cool because I was like doing this C program that talked in Bluetooth to your car, and it felt pretty nice to be able, like, I felt like I had powers, you know, like, oh, I can speak to your car now, I can do stuff. And then later on, I had like a few other internships, and my last one was on video games. So, well, but I was like almost ready to graduate. And this last internship was on video games, like these video game studios in Paris, 50 people, so like devs and like artists and like all that, you know, the nice stuff, all the people, like, you get all the things you can think about. It's a really cool studio with really nice people. But in the end, I realized like, video games programming, it's not exactly the right thing for me. It wasn't right for me, even though like I made friends there. I loved C++ and like I loved playing video games. But just because you like video games doesn't mean that you will like actually working on video games. And I didn't like it because the first thing is like. I felt like the video games industry was kind of like eating people, and like and you as an intern, you get to be the young person that asks like very deep questions to all the people you meet, like, hey, how do you like your job, and what is annoying about your job, and like, would you do that forever? If you could change one thing, what would that be? And I was sitting next to this person that just had a tiny kids, and his partner at the time was just calling him exactly at the time he needed to leave the office, just to see if he was going home, like, are you coming home tonight on time or not? So can I expect you? Also, as like with the interaction I had with people, it really felt like there was like sort of this competition. Everyone wants to be the guy that does the stuff and would like to sort of make a name, because that's how you sort of improve. And to the point that you get people tell you like, hey, if you want to be working in video games, you don't exactly need a raise because you're doing your dream job, you know, right? Yeah. So by the end of that internship, even though my manager asked me like if I wanted to do another internship because the possibility was there, and I remember like having like this deep internal monologue, like, what am I gonna do? It's really what I wanted to do, but it's really not it. I'm not gonna strive here, and I'm gonna become sad. And these people are nice, and I love working here, but it's not gonna be sustainable for me. It's not gonna work for me. So and that's about when I started. Started doing the startup thing. So I wanted to become this, Elon Musk type of person, where you start this nice startup and become rich instantly. It didn't work quite well. So I did a few websites for myself, and with a friend, we started this like social network for gamers. And also I was a freelancer at the time, like just doing so. I was working with like PHP Symfony 2, which is like a PHP framework. And I felt like it was really cool because it gave you like so much freedom to do whatever. And you also had these bundles. So it allowed you to like do these little packages, and like you really know how to use them, and you can like take them and like it helps you like be faster to like create websites. So I could like sort of create websites in 2 weeks, or sometimes even a weekend, for simple projects. And same here, after a year and a half, I also remember thinking to myself, well, that's not exactly for me. And that's when I started like looking for like opportunities and jobs and stuff. Like, what could I do? I need to change. Like, I didn't want to be tagged as like Symfony 2 guy, because it felt like PHP was not also the right language for me, and being a freelancer was definitely not for me, because it's really hard to find clients. well, at least for me. And it was also not for me because Symfony and PHP and JavaScript, because I was also like, what we call a full stack dev. They were moving a little bit too fast for me. There was so many things going on. I was trying to follow, to find the right framework. And maybe I should have probably slowed down, but it really felt like everyone was trying to create another framework or another solution to their problem, instead of maybe thinking about maybe the issue is actually the language and not the framework they're using. Yeah, and that's about when I found Go. Like, someone in the office was chatting about it and was really hyped about it, and I overheard the conversation, and over the weekend I gave it a go, and I remember like sort of instantly feeling it like it to be the good language for me. Like, it had all the things I liked about C and C++, statically compiled, really simple objects, not too much like parentheses or like, introduction to a file. It really gets to the like programming, and I thought it really moves so many things out of your way so that you can just like get to programming, and at the same time, all of the choices that were made to make it felt so right to me, as someone that came from C, C++, and Symfony 2 with bundles, packages, and I instantly started doing open source work. So I was doing this library that was compiling perceptual hashes of images. So basically, you have an image and you apply magic maths to it, and you get sort of a perceptual number that gives that identifies this image or the part of an image, and it allows you to tell what looks like what. And in the beginning it was really bad, and it was really bad for a few years actually, or months maybe. Like in the beginning I would have this routine that would treat one line of pixel, like per line of pixel, one routine, easy to scale, right? You just let the Go runtime do it, but it turns out it was really bad. Yeah, it was really bad, and so much more simpler to have one thread do everything. And then I started doing and about Go, that one thing that I felt was kind of annoying and I didn't know what to think about was the memory management, like the fact that you don't malloc, you don't allocate memory yourself, and you don't decide sort of what is going to be the size of what and whatnot. And it took me a few years to start liking it. After seeing all of these security issues and problems that would cause, and I started thinking, yeah, maybe it's okay that I don't sort of manage memory, and the Go does that, because then I don't have to be scared about that, and it's one thing I can take out of my plate. And maybe one day the garbage collector is going to be so powerful that it's going to be sort of transparent. Yeah, and in hindsight, now that I look back at it, I really think that this language pick was not only technological, but also a little bit about values. So if you look at the values of Go, for simplicity yet powerfulness and completeness, and the fact that it's made to be easy to maintain and to pick up as a newcomer, I really thought then, and I still think that this language would bring me more to people that are maybe okay with things being a bit more simple, that people that are maybe a little bit more humble, or people that maybe are a little bit more kinder to me when I do simple stuff. It took me a while to realize this value stuff are really important, because as a young engineer, I really thought, values are just the things that recruiting people put in their recruiting page so that they can hire you. But like, it's actually a really good thing to look at as a beginner, because some companies have values, but then they don't adhere to them when you ask that questions. And then that gives you a lot of information about like what your job is going to be like. And some companies like have this thing directly in the hiring process. To me, it's like a great. Today, if I could give myself an advice for the future, maybe pay a little bit more attention to like the value things they were talking about, because it's not unimportant. The way I got better and I keep myself sort of up to date with things is Go. So like a very good way, at least for me, to like sort of learn new stuff in Go is to read code from GitHub. So like I read so many like core packages to Go, like the HTTP package or the networking package, because you learn not only things about Go, but things about like how the protocols work and how these little things are and why are they done like that. And but just reading wasn't enough, so I sort of made this sort of copycat package that would work very similarly to the HTTP package, but do something with WebSockets and sockets. That deep dive was really interesting, because you really get into a project that is used by so many and that works basically. And I think that's important to have. And at the same time, I was contributing to open source stuff. And this actually like 2 months after picking up Go and like contributing and doing my libraries, this got me my first Go job. Like someone sent me an email saying, hey, we're building this social network geographical scrapper that is going to be all in Go, and we would like to hire you. And I remember saying instantly yes, because yay, what more experience can you get than having a job that is in the language you're learning? So that's like fast track to learn more. Today, the way I keep myself up to date with Go is like I registered to 3 main channels. Like there's like 2 that are Go oriented and 1 that is tech and more general oriented. So like the first one is like the changelog of the Go language. It's really nice because I always completely parse it, because it's kind of hard to read the whole language spec. But if you read the changelogs, then you can like sort of have a tiny deep dive about a little part of Go that maybe you will use, maybe you have used, and it gives you like ideas like of how you can do stuff, and also if that part is interesting, you can go there and read that code, and that was really cool. A second Go sort of source of information is like the Golang weekly mailing list. I think this one is really nice because it gives you like blog posts, like what's like the new stuff about Go. And this new project is doing that, so you can do other deep dives with projects that do something you had no idea you were interested about before. And my latest way to sort of keep up to date is like I have this TLDR newsletter, and I'm gonna put a link down the video somewhere so that you can maybe take a look at it. And it gives me like very, very extra short information about like, hey, this company is building this new cool stuff. This person made this new library, and it's like very getting to the point. And if you're interested, you can click on there and read some more. That's like the 3 like ways I have to keep myself up to date. I try to like keep up to date, but not like spend my whole time doing that, because yeah, you can spend a lot of time learning new stuff, and I really enjoy it. But I also enjoy life and yeah, being with my family and stuff. So yeah, that's like these 3 little things, and I read them at least weekly. And that these give me like a lot of opportunities to learn new stuff. So if I feel like I have the energy to read this library, then I'll go and do it. Some weeks I just they would just pass by, and I don't read anything because I don't have spoons, you know. And that's about it, I think. I'll try to, I'll try to answer your questions if you have some, and if I'm here. But if you have, don't hesitate sending me a message on Slack on the thread of my talk. I will be happy to answer it. I really hope this was insightful for you. And thanks for listening.
Okay, hello everyone. This is awesome. It's been a long event, and again, thank you to everyone for sticking with us and joining in. It's really been a pleasure. I don't know. Before I say my closing notes, Angelica, would you like to say a few kind words?
No, I mean, thank you so much. We've had an incredible attendance today. Really excited, this being our first, GDN event. Some great speakers. Thank you. If any of the speakers are still on, thank you so much. And if any of you attendees would like to be a speaker, please don't hesitate. Reach out to me or Wilken, and we'll make it happen.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, you already have a plus from us, so feel free to reach out. With that, I do want to say that the video will be on YouTube. It's being live streamed now, and then it'll be made available in the new Go Developer Network YouTube channel, GoDevNet. You can reach it at youtube.gobridge.org. Right now, they'll have a few videos, probably just one right now, but we're hoping to see a lot more. So if you are a meetup organizer or part of a meetup and you want to see your videos being posted, please reach out. We'll love to host them on the new GoDevNet channel. So don't be shy. We're here to help and serve the community. So as they say in my house, mi casa, su casa. So we're here for you. Thank you so much once again, everyone.
All right.
Bye.